Oh, that's the good stuff.
Welcome back, everybody, to Goodwill Podcasting with Connor, Dan, and Stone, your movie podcast that today is talking about the newest big movie release in theaters, and that is Joker, Folie À Deux. The disaster that is, possibly, maybe not in the opinions of people who, watch the movie, but certainly in the global reception of it. It's not what a lot of people were expecting, and I'm really happy that we have returning today, I guess, Jermiah Battle for the third time, because he is on the positive side. I'm more in the middle. Dan's on the other side. It's going to be a really interesting conversation today. But more than this film, why we brought Jeremiah on is we're talking not only about Joker Folie À Deux, the original Joker from 2019, but also their inspirations, as in the pictures by Martin Scorsese, Taxi Driver, and the King of Comedy. So we thought Jeremiah would be the best guest to talk to, not only for us, but also our audience. So, man, welcome back for the third time on Goodwill Podcasting. Oh, the celebrity! I'm so sorry for interrupting a celebrity, but the celebrity, Jermiah Battle, living in New York, doing interviews for Letterboxd. My God!
Dude, all that stuff has been so crazy. Like, it's been so randomly. And, like, it's just been, like, a crazy whirlwind of opportunities that have been coming my way. And I'm just accepting them as they come. I'm very thankful for them all. Not a celebrity, but just a guy who likes movies,
Yet.
How did that come about, Jeremiah?
Literally, they just reached out to me through DM, and that was it.
Nice, short and simple, Dave.
How long did it take you to pick out your red carpet outfit?
I was like the day before, I kept going through different outfits, trying to pick one, and then I reached out to the guy who was doing the video stuff, and I was like, "Hey man, what are you wearing?" And he was like, "Honestly, you don't even have to even wear anything crazy because we're just there to do the interviews. Let the celebrities dress all nice, whatever. Just wear something that you would wear to like a job interview, basically, or whatever. Just casual, nice business casual stuff." Yeah,
that was awesome. It was great to see.
Yeah, Jeremiah, I gotta say I'm mad at you because I remember when I lived in New Jersey for a bit, when me and my wife were doing travel nursing. I think Jeremiah was one of the first people I messaged, and I was like, dude, because I remember this is when we were newly becoming friends, I remember you posting a video of different theaters in New York City. And I was like, damn, he lives there. Awesome. And I messaged him and I was like, we can need to hang out. Where do I have to go? And he's like, actually, I'm in Maryland. And I was like, shit. But now you're in New York City, which is insane. And I wish I was back there, because I was telling Connor before you guys got on, I'm about to get wrecked by a hurricane. So I wish I was back in New Jersey rather than being down here with you.
Where are you living at?
So I live in between Tampa and Orlando. That's where I'm at, in a city called Lakeland. And right now, Connor didn't even know this, because when I mentioned a hurricane, he's like, oh, Helene, and thoughts to everyone who's in North Carolina. That's a horrible thing that is happening over there, that has happened. But there's actually a new one, I believe, called Hurricane Milton, that's actually forming in the Gulf, which everyone's been really afraid about, because I guess against people's best opinions on the matter, Tampa has just been building up right on the shore, and they've luckily never been hit. But this is supposed to be a Category 3. I think it's supposed to hit us on Wednesday night. So it's supposed to just clear through Tampa and Orlando. So, I wish I was in New York watching, movies with Jeremiah Battle. That's all I'll say. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I didn't realize how many... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say really quick, this is Jeremiah's fourth time, technically, because Jeremiah was with me and Connor doing the Harry Potter episode. Then you did Chazelle and Linklater, right? And now this, that's technically 4, but 3 with Stone.
Yeah. 2 with Stone. I wasn't here for the Linklater episode.
And also,
right,
I think Jeremiah is in our top 10 twice on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken. Because we got Harry Potter.
Take it 3.
And Damien Chazelle.
You got to do some viral shit.
Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Oh no, I forgot what I was gonna say actually. I completely forgot what I was gonna say.
No worries.
Oh no, I do remember. I didn't realize how many people on Film Talk were in the New York, New Jersey area. There's so many people who are in this area, It's like insane. I guess that makes sense. You know, New York is like a hub for like movies, I guess. So it would make sense that there are people on the app that are from New York. But yeah, it's just cool meeting people that I've like known through like the screen for a long time. So, really cool.
I got
Yes,
to. I say I know you met them. I got to meet. I went to see Civil War, and I just luckily Alex Garland was there, and Kaylee Spaney and Kristen Dunst. The entire cast was there. That I didn't know that was going to happen. A lot of people from A24 were there, but anyways, during that screening afterwards, actually, like you just did with the movie and the substance and everything, I got to meet George and Sophie. It was pretty interesting because Sophie didn't necessarily love Civil War, and George actually kind of really liked it. So it was cool to hear their different opinions on the matter. But it's cool that you got to meet them too. On it, I was thinking the Civil War was good, but the one time I got to go to like a big thing, kind of like what you went to when it comes to the substance and movie, what I got to go to that was like that was Rebel Moon Part 1 or Part 2. So I'm glad you got to go to a really, really good film. That's basically what I'm saying when it comes to that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I think that's honestly one of the. I mean, I've seen a lot of good movies from this year, but I think that's maybe like top 15. But I've seen like a lot of good movies, but I think it's like definitely on like the higher end of quality movies from this year.
I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was really, really, really funny. Like, I think it's one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long time. But also, obviously, had stuff to say, and the performances were just all really good. It's. I feel like we'll think about that movie for a long time. You won't forget it, and like so many movies, just kind of, for better or for worse, go kind of in one ear and out the other. Like you might enjoy them, but you're not going to be thinking about them in 5 years. I think The Substance is one that we'll remember. So, well, I loved it.
Are any of the films that you've watched this year up to the level that is the Taxi Driver? Has anything past that, you think, in terms of quality or your appeal towards it? What is your number one movie of the year? I don't know if I know that.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, Dune 2. Dune Part 2 for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess Taxi Driver and Dune Part 2 are a little bit different.
Yeah. But then like my
Maybe
number
slightly.
2 is probably Challengers. Is my number 2 probably.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll say when I was watching Taxi Driver, it's funny, Jeremiah, because I watched 2 of your films now, right? I watched Stalemate, and then what was your first one called with your grandmother?
Oh, Lorraine.
Lorraine. That was your first one, correct? I'm not wrong with that.
Yeah.
Okay. When I was watching Taxi Driver and the way that Martin Scorsese films this, and just thinking about you being on the podcast, I was thinking that I honestly could see Jeremiah making a movie like anyways, but more than King of Comedy, which is the other film by him that we're going to be talking about, is the fact that this one seems like there's an overemphasis on the style of the filmmaking. Where King of Comedy, I feel like it's more of the story that is the hook. The hook of this is the filmmaking, and through the filmmaking, you get to see more about this character. And just, I think I read an interview with Martin saying that he kind of wants this in between reality and a dreamlike state is how he tried to design the film. Kind of where you are in the state of Travis, like he can't sleep, and he kind of wanted to mirror that in the filmmaking itself. But I was telling Dan before we got on, I actually had never watched Taxi Driver or The King of Comedy. When it comes to Martin, I'm kind of an infant. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the movies that I've watched of him haven't been a whole lot. I mean, doing the podcast, I got to watch one recently, Bringing Out the Dead, which was really cool and very reminiscent of Taxi Driver as well. The way that it paints.
I just rewatched that recently. Yeah, I just watched that maybe like 2 months ago, a month ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way that it just, yeah.
Of Bringing Out the Dead.
That movie? Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I think, I'm on the more positive of it. I think it's not like the most perfect movie ever, but I really did like what Nicolas Cage brought to the film, and Ving Rhames. Like, there's a lot of nice supporting people in there.
I was gonna say I'm not high on either of these movies, and I like Bringing Out the Dead better.
You're not high on Taxi Driver or King of
No, and I told Dan and Stone this. It's the only movie this week I didn't get to revisit, but I did watch it fairly recently. To really tell you why I didn't like it, I want to go back and rewatch it. But from what I remember, is He's a Marine veteran. It's like one of the first things they establish. They got some stuff wrong when talking about that. So obviously that bothers me more than it'll bother, anyone else. And two, there was just parts of it that felt like it dragged for me and were a little slow. So, but I do have a list on Letterboxd called popular movies that I didn't like that I'm going to go back and revisit. And that includes things like Interstellar, Jackie Brown, Taxi Driver.
It's quite a list. I think it's funny that you say that, Connor, because I think Taxi Driver is very carefully paced. I think that's something that I enjoy about it. I actually, rewatching this, I liked it a little bit more than I remembered. Which, was a pleasant surprise. And I think when we talk about like Joker later on, one of my problems with Joker is I feel like it happens very quickly in terms of what his kind of descent. It's kind of very like surface level interactions that feel very forced, and you get a lot of information about him. But like Taxi Driver, you really feel like you're pulled into this guy's life and you get to know him. Excuse me. I think when Paul Schrader wrote this, he was in a horrible place, like horrible place. Basically every relationship in his life had fallen apart. He was really good friends with Pauline Kael, the critic, who was one of the critics that Megalopolis used ChatGPT to make up a quote about. But Pauline Kael was kind of like an adoptive mom to Paul Schrader. And they had broken bad. He lost his marriage. He lost the woman that he left his wife for. And then he wrote Taxi Driver. So he really was in a bad way. And he pretty much wanted to make a story about loneliness, about kind of how that works, how it progresses, how people can be kind of warped. But I feel like the story is so much more. I think the angle of him being a veteran, obviously, I think he's an alcoholic. Like you see him drinking from a flask throughout the movie. His insomnia, I think, is really bad. And like what that does to people, like in terms of your brain chemistry is it's terrible. Stone, you make sure you're sleeping.
I was just saying, Jeremiah, you might not know this, but I've been working night shift for a couple of weeks now.
Oh, man.
And the way my life is not very fun, I would say. Me and my wife went to bed very late last night, and we woke up at like 2:00 today. It's just a struggle. Like nothing has any order. I'm like, when did I brush my teeth last? Stuff like this. Like it used to be like, wake up in the morning, go to bed. It's just like chaos. But anyways, I side with Travis when it comes to that.
I actually have medically diagnosed insomnia, and so does my mom. So like I've gone like 5.5 days without sleeping before, and it's awful. Like
never mind.
Yeah.
I'll Connor. Never mind. Not me.
I have I have prescribed Ambien.
Yeah.
Which is
one of my good friends, Connor.
Too. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say my good buddy has the same thing, and he's prescribed medicine, and like it sucks, and the medicine sucks, and like it's just.
And it is also wild too. I'm not condoning this to anyone at home because I actually have like a medical issue with insomnia. But if you take Ambien and you don't sleep, you trip balls. It is insane. I've literally called my wife.
Podcast does not condone this, by the way.
Yeah, no, not at all.
We're not responsible.
When we were dating, I like took it one night because I hadn't slept in like 3 days, and then I like called her talking about how I saw a tortilla sitting on my nightstand painting a Salvador Dali painting that was moving. It was the craziest thing ever.
What?
Damn, you learn something new every day.
Yeah. Anyway,
moral of the story is insomnia is bad. Bad.
Yeah. Taxi Driver.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I can only imagine, being you, Jeremiah, and trying to be a filmmaker, and then watching this. Like I said at the beginning, it's just the way he uses mirrors and colors and structures New York City is just, I think, the draw of this film. It really is, and especially that accompanied with the score, which it was nominated for. The movie was nominated for. What about this movie stands out the most to you? I would say. I wondered if it is the filmmaking or maybe something else, maybe De Niro.
Yeah, so I mean, even outside of like the filmmaking itself, like what this movie means to me in my journey with like watching movies and filmmaking was like, so I really got into watching movies around 8th grade, and this was actually one of the movies that like I watched initially. So I remember I'd watched Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, and that was like the one that was like, whoa, like I gotta watch all like these like greatest movies ever. So I went on Google. I was searching up what are the greatest movies of all time, right? And so it was
Yeah.
showing me guys like Mark Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, Stanley Kubrick. So like I was like trying to watch like all these movies from all these guys. And one of the first ones, like I said, was Scorsese. And the first film it said was Taxi Driver. So I'm like, okay, I gotta watch this movie. And like it literally blew my mind. I remember when I was first like buying movies, like Taxi Driver was one of the first. It was Taxi Driver and The Wolf of Wall Street. Like those were and The Departed. Those were like my three Scorsese movies. But this movie just means so much to me. Like I remember like just watching the opening sequences, seeing De Niro just driving through New York City, all the imagery, and that beautiful score from Bernard Herrmann, I believe.
I believe so. Yep.
Bernard Herrmann?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bernard Herrmann. It's just like I honestly I constantly think about that score all the time. It's so iconic, so memorable. And the movie just a lot. I think about it often. And the filmmaking is just like as a young filmmaker and like watching it that young, I was like, how can I ever make something like this? And it's very inspiring. Yeah. Love Taxi Driver.
So I was watching this essay that was super fascinating before we jumped on about the fact that how or the decisions that Scorsese makes of who to put in the frame when necessarily someone is in the back seat of the taxi. Like when it comes to the politician whose name is Palatine, I believe, he is like center in the frame because his strong suit is the fact that he is a talker. He's a charismatic man. So that's kind of like his poison. That's how he like wins over people. So he's like in focus, has a monologue, or a lot that he's saying towards Travis. But then, and he, is the man technically inside of Betsy's life, right? This politician, the one who's basically Travis envies because she likes him more than she wants to be with Travis. But then when it comes to Iris and her pimp, right? The very first time that you see him, you don't necessarily see his face. Iris gets in the back seat and all you do is you see his arms, you see his strength, because that's what Travis sees about him. That is technically, this pimp's strength is the fact that he can control these women. It's not his charisma. So just like little things like that. And obviously everything with like the rear view mirror and stuff like that, you have these super big close-ups on Travis because his entire thing's from his perspective. And then when it's not his perspective, it's a different angle. And you're still seeing it from his perspective, but it's a shot from his eyes to the rear view mirror. And then you see the back seat with like Betsy or Iris, something like that. I just find everything in the taxi, which the movie's called Taxi Driver, is pretty mesmerizing and pretty impressive.
Another thing I want to talk about in terms of being in the car with him is I think one of the most impactful moments in the movie for me, and maybe a turning point for Travis, is Scorsese's cameo. When he gives that monologue for whatever it is, 4 or 5 minutes, and he's talking about, I guess they're outside where his wife is, she's cheating on him. He's talking about how he's gonna, shoot the guy she's with. He's very angry. He's obviously like racially motivated as well, which Travis is throughout the course of the entire movie. Like Travis is a racist. And the way his thoughts seem to regress and the way like the rhetoric that gets used is very typical, like white supremacist kind of ideology in terms of like the trash and the filth and the like, cleansing the street, all that stuff. Like, so I feel like Scorsese's cameo, which Scorsese wasn't supposed to do, I forget who that was supposed to be, but they either pulled out or weren't able to do it like right before.
Joaquin Phoenix?
And he doesn't. What did you say?
I said Joaquin Phoenix?
No. But he doesn't like being on camera. He's relatively shy in that way. So he didn't really want to do it, but he felt like it was important. So he stepped in because he wanted it done right. So I feel like that moment was so huge for Travis in terms of just becoming more violent in terms of his ideas and, taking it to that next step. And then also carrying into another scene I think is important when he actually goes to buy like a firearm and he's looking at all the weapons. Like that scene is like, it's almost like romantic the way it's shot, like the way it's like lingering on each of the guns and it's like taking so much time, like looking at them. And you can tell Travis is just like so fascinated and like so fixated on it and feels like that's going to be some kind of you know, symbolized some kind of actual power for him. And then once he kind of gets the weapons, it kind of changes his life. He becomes more regimented. He's, doing everything organized. He's working out. He's taking care of what he's eating. He's like, he feels like he has a purpose and he feels more powerful. And like, that's where everything kind of changes to me too. So, but I thought Scorsese's cameo was really, really good. And, a tough scene for a director to do too, but
I don't know if he's gotten over that, or because he was in, Killers of the Flower Moon, and I almost missed him in King of Comedy. He's not there for very long in King of Comedy, but I was like, oh shit, there he is, kind of just for a second.
yeah. But I think that scene was really impactful in terms of, spending time in the cab. I also wanted to ask you guys Marty's talked a lot about wanting this character to be sympathetic enough but not at the same time. And I think that's where some people have a problem with this movie because they don't see him as sympathetic at all. So I wanted to get your guys' take on the character, where he kind of breaks bad, how you feel about him, if you have sympathy, how you feel in general.
I feel like we start with Connor. Connor has
go ahead, Connor.
Like I said, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but from what I do remember, I don't feel sympathy for him. I don't think the entire film. Maybe for the first 15 minutes, give or take.
I would say I'm not sympathetic towards him. I would say he's a dangerous person because he is nobody. All of his actions are based on our reactions based on the women that are in his life. So in a sense, he is a bad guy in the context of Betsy's story, where he is possibly going to kill this politician. In a sense, they're framing him as, that's not a good act to do. But then when it comes to Iris and him killing, the pimp and, every man that's in her life and has put her in this terrible situation, those are bad people. He's killing bad people. So he is a person who just acts on a whim, and you can only imagine who's going to be the next person after Iris, who's the next woman in his life, and who will he kill again, because it probably will be a politician or a good person, because who's the remaining woman in his life after everything's all over? It again is Betsy. So he's probably going to be intimidated or put off by another man in her life yet again, and probably kill again. So he's just super dangerous. He's not confident in himself. And something that's fascinating is, this entire story is about masculinity, but told through the perspective of women, like how they can change a man not for better, just in general. And it's funny because Betsy tells him that he's a walking contradiction. And the thing is that he's so fixated on the fact that New York City is filth and that's a disgusting town and Palatine needs to clean it up. But then you have him going to pornos and he drinks all the time and he doesn't take care of himself. He is a contradiction. He's a disgusting human being who doesn't have a life. So he follows around. So he doesn't sleep, doesn't have a typical 9 to 5, doesn't know what to do. He's just no purpose. There's no purpose there. Only circumstances.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead, Jeremiah.
No, I was going to say, I think for me is obviously throughout the film, you see that he's a bad person, a disgusting person who's living in this disgusting place. And he's kind of a product of his environment. But for me, I feel like there is some sympathy there. And I just feel sorry for him because of how dangerous he is to himself, how dangerous he is to the people around him. And it only makes me wonder, what led him, what led him to this point, things that happened before the film starts, what did he have to go through to get to this point? How did his psyche, how did his personality form? And that, I start to feel kind of sorry for him because they're like you said, he was in the military and systems, there are systems that are put in place that don't allow people to have access. They're put back into the country. So it only makes me think how did the systems fail him, and like how just did his life go wrong in a way. So in a way, I do feel sorry for him, but at the same time, he is a disgusting person, dangerous person, a threat to pretty much everyone around him at all times. So it's like a weird line to walk.
Yeah, and to go off what you're saying, I think we know to an extent what happened before, and what happened before was Vietnam. Like he was in Vietnam, he came back, and I think, I guess I don't know if it was last week's episode, whatever. I was talking about First Blood, and that movie is about the same thing in a different way, with someone coming home and not knowing what the fuck is going on, what to do, not able to really find a place in society, dealing with PTSD, dealing with a sense of being part of a war that a lot of veterans, I think, came home and weren't quite sure why they were there or what the objective even was in Vietnam. So I think the movie doesn't, like, Taxi Driver isn't concerned with really addressing that directly, but it still establishes that is his background. So I think when you take it that way, I guess you can feel for him in a way, and I think he does feel very human. He feels like a real person to me. Like, he doesn't feel fake. And like what De Niro is doing is really, really good. And it's interesting because what he does here really is so different from what he does in King of Comedy, which we're going to talk about. But there's such different performances. And I think I like his performance in King of Comedy a little bit better, but this is so good. Like, he's so cold and detached and just odd. And I think what's interesting about, like, morally what this movie does at its end is so interesting to me, because even when he's helping Iris, you feel like he's just a fucking narcissist. Like, he just wants to be a white knight and come in and have, like, you wouldn't trust him with Iris alone for an extended period of time. Like, you and it still feels gross. Like, it doesn't feel like he wants to help her for moral reasons. It feels like he wants to be like her savior, and then God knows what, like, where you don't know what's going to happen next, but she's still 12. And it's like, you don't feel good about anything he's doing, even though he's helping a kid in a terrible situation. It's very interesting morally what the movie does and how it sets that up. Also, just Harvey Keitel is really good in this as the pimp. He's and he spent a lot of time with pimps getting ready for this and kind of went into that world. And De Niro spent a month doing 15-hour shifts driving cabs to get ready for this as well, and spent time with a lot of different people. He developed like that Midwest accent, which is very specific to, and like he's put a lot of work into it, and it obviously paid off. But it's a very difficult movie. But I think sometimes people talk about this, I think, in a way that's a little more simplistic than it actually is, or maybe they haven't watched it in a while. But rewatching it, I still think it has a lot to say, and I don't think it's not painting Travis Bickle as a hero.
So do you have sympathy for him? You asked us.
Not to a large extent, but I think he's just someone that's he's just lost. He's gone from the beginning of the movie, and like the question, I guess, would be, well, what is this person's way out of this? If they're completely isolated, completely alone, not sleeping, alcoholic, with PTSD, what is their way out? And I think, to an extent, that's what Joker tries to look at, is like someone like that. And then obviously a different person, different character, but like trying to get help and what those systems actually are capable of handling. And Joker like half does that. So yeah, I'm rambling, but it's not a movie that asks you to cheer. You're not cheering for him ever. So I think that's a good thing.
Sam, I'm
If
curious
anything, you're scared of
because
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm curious because you said something that you like about him is the fact that he feels like kind of like a real person. And what De Niro does, obviously the character is Joker, why we're doing this episode, is a combination between King of Comedy and Taxi Driver. But he's also, the character himself is a combination between the two, because different from this story. But you know what? Let me talk about that. Do you guys think the ending of this is a fantasy or is it real life? I know that's a
Fantasy.
debate. I think it's real. And I think,
Jeremiah?
and I'm gonna say like that's half my opinion, half of I researched it, and I think it's particularly what De Niro does or what Scorsese does with the camera is the fact that he just focuses it in on De Niro, like it's still coming from his perspective, and this is how he still is in a way. Like basically, it's framed the exact same way of any other sequence in the taxi cab. Like nothing necessarily about the filmmaking shows you that it is a dream. Just the story itself doesn't seem realistic, if that makes sense.
What do you think, Jeremiah?
I don't know. I feel like
What are you
I
looking
kind
at?
of like what I'm on Dex, just looking at the stills from the film.
Ah,
No plug. It's just a cool app where you can like see like stills from different various movies and whatnot. I don't know. I feel like I've always thought it was fantasy, but I like the points that you brought up. So I might change my think to it may be in reality. Maybe.
like it is framed the exact same way until Betsy leaves the car. And then all of a sudden it's like very quick shots. Like it looks like it's sped up, which kind of I think shows us that in a way you think Travis might have a sound mind now because he seems more reserved and more put together because of his circumstances. But then as soon as she leaves the vehicle, the camera just goes wild and shows you no, he's still at a danger of himself and still isn't sound mind. But necessarily when he's in the car with her, nothing really changes. It just seems too good to believe or not necessarily believable.
Do you guys want to hear what Schrader said about it?
Yeah,
This
I'm
doesn't
sure
help
that.
at all.
Oh, okay. I was like, you can trust me, but okay.
He said it was not to be taken as a dream sequence, but that he envisioned it as returning to the beginning of the film as if the last frame could be sliced to the first frame and the movie started all over again.
It's basically what I said.
Yeah. It's very
So-
vague, though.
Is it? Sorry. But I will say the one scene, it might be the most iconic scene of the movie, possibly. Like I said, this is my first time watching it. What do you think is like the shot that is the most iconic shot of the film? Because that's what
Are
I'm
you
about to
talking
talk
to me?
about.
Are you talking to me?
Whole movie?
Oh, that's not the one I'm thinking of, but probably. That's probably it. What
The one
I
for
have
me
seen.
Oh,
Go ahead, go
go ahead. I was gonna say
No, you-
the one for me is the phone call one in the hallway. That's the one for me that I always think about the camera pans away
Ooh.
from him at the phone. I remember reading a article or watching an interview and Scorsese was talking about it,
It's his
and
favorite.
he's talking about,
It's his favorite.
yeah, and just how like the filmmaking and how the camera is like so, what's the word I'm looking for? So
Embarrassed.
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 Right? Yeah.
To like sitting on that moment, so we have to pan away. And I just like I love that so much. It's probably my favorite of the movie.
Maybe I've seen it so much because it's been memed then. But the sequence that I was thinking of is when he's sitting in that theater and the porno's playing and he has like his fingers like right by his eye. That's what I was thinking of. And something I noticed about that, which I haven't seen anybody talk about, is I paid attention to this because, like I said, I really felt the connection and the drive of this movie was his relationship with women. And is if you pay attention during the porno, he doesn't start doing this with his eye until the woman starts speaking. So it's more like he is trying to like, I don't know, kill her. I don't know. That's pretty far, but I was just thinking about the fact of him just doing that as soon as she starts speaking and seeing a woman on screen that is beautiful, that is with a man, and basically maybe not thinking that it's realistic and trying to change it by doing that with his fingers. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching too far, but I thought that was super interesting.
I also think it's very, and the other thing Schrader's talked about a lot is that he feels like this type of character, this type of person in real life, and he felt like this in his own life, like pushes people away that get close to them, and it's like it's a very self-sabotage. Like he has enough like charisma and charm to like get a date with Betsy. Is that her name? And then he just takes her to like a porn movie in a theater. Like he self sabotages that completely. Like all he had to do was just be normal and like just talk. Like it could have gone better for him. He does something ridiculous. Then like she's trying to leave and he like puts his hands on her and like it just completely disintegrates. And then you get to that scene, Jeremiah, where that you talked about where he's like confused as to what happened and like still thinks she's gonna go out with him. Like why? Like he destroyed that for himself. It wasn't that she was initially disinterested or anything. He had a chance, and then he acted like a clown. So it's
But
interesting.
did he fall asleep on the date?
No, he did not. He did not. But yeah. So yeah, I just think that's interesting to see how Schrader thought about that when he was writing it, and it's a lot of self-sabotaging, I think, throughout the course of the movie.
Dating's hard. I'd say my favorite thing in the world is hearing my buddies' dating stories. Because I'm with my wife now. I'm not dating anymore. It's just fun hearing him go on so many dates and being like, this happened with this girl. I'm just like, it's fun.
I'm with you, Stan.
Hopefully they're not taking them to any adult movie houses.
No. He did turn off his location last night. So my other buddy I was talking to, I don't really pay attention to his location, but my other buddy I was talking to was like, I shouldn't drop his name, but his name's Grant. I'll just say that, but he doesn't listen to our podcast. But I'm like, he's like, Grant, turn off his location. I was like, really? I looked at it and we're like, could have gone pretty far for a date. He's been known to do that, but I shouldn't say this.
You check on your buddy's locations that frequently?
No. Like I said, it was my other friend who told me that. They live in the same city, so that's why he always checks, like wondering where he's at. Like, should we hang or something? Is he doing anything? But me, I'm not there, so I never check on it. But, anyways, that was a little interesting segue. What do you guys have this ranked at?
2.5.
Damn.
2.5.
I told you guys I didn't like it.
Connor,
I've been very clear about that since the beginning.
You just need to rewatch it. Yeah, me and Dan know what happened. You need to rewatch it. It's all right.
I fully agree.
I have it at 4 stars.
4.5.
I have it at 4.5.
Ah, look at that. Scorsese heads we are. Jeremiah.
Yes.
So, I've watched like 5 Scorsese films, so let's talk about one of them. The next
movies,
one.
So many
I know.
Ridiculous.
I thought about watching his films, and I was like, "There's way too many." Like I would just be, and I was telling Connor before I got on, dude. I have been rewatching Game of Thrones with my wife, and that just takes up so much time. And I really love it because it's something we get to do together. But I've watched 55 hours of television. Imagine how many movies I could fit in that. But I really enjoy watching it, especially when it's the better seasons. But
yeah, Dan, I don't know if you want to get in on this, but I made a deal with Stone that when he finishes Game of Thrones, he'll watch Sons of Anarchy. When I finish Sons, I'll watch Game of Thrones.
I've never watched Sons of Anarchy, but I would like
I'll
to.
I'll watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or something.
I struggle to make time for TV at all. Like at
I'm
this
the
point
same way.
in my life, I'm just like watching movies whenever I can because I feel like there's just so much shit to watch. But I love TV, but I just feel like it takes up so much time. But really quickly, I was going to ask Jeremiah: is Scorsese your favorite director of all time?
Ultimately, I do think so. Like, it's like such a hard question to answer, but like whenever someone asks like who's your favorite director of all time, like Scorsese is always like one of the first people I think of. So I think
It's just so many good movies. Like it's so many good movies.
It's ridiculous how many good movies he has, and like the great movies that he's still making. Like if you look at his peers, like people who were making like films like in his prime, like at the same time as him, like he's still making like quality movies, and his peers aren't really doing it at the same rate that he is.
Yeah, Marty's not making Megalopolis, so
yeah.
What about Spielberg?
Spielberg has. I mean, what Spielberg?
He's had some flops though. He's had some duds.
His last 2 were what, Fablemans and West Side Story, which I both thought were pretty good.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like the one that sticks out is like wasn't the BFG directed by him?
Oh, that was actually the first Spielberg movie I watched in theater.
Really, dude? You
I
know what I just thought of?
I thought you were gonna say Ready Player One, Stone, and we were gonna fight.
No, I haven't watched that in a long time. I know that has a lot of passionate fans, but I just thought of the fact that Jeremiah was gonna be like, yeah. So when I looked up greatest movies of all time, it was like Taxi Driver, and the next was like Spielberg. So I watched the BFG right after Taxi Driver. that's what popped in my head.
Yeah, I mean,
That was such
Spielberg's
an
last 5
interesting
movies are
time,
the
like-
post
Mhm.
Ready Player One, West Side Story, and The Fablemans, which I think are all good to very good. So
I'm pumped for his
He's
next
still
movie
doing
too. The UFO. I love a good sci-fi film. I really do.
yeah,
He's making a UFO
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
working on it. Yeah,
Hey,
No, Ready
the
Player
thing-
One is like one of my all-time
Therefore-
comfort movies.
got Spielberg. Gotta love Spielberg.
I think I remember the fact that in 2026, Universal Studios is putting out an original film by Jordan Peele, the Daniels from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then Spielberg, all in the same year.
Be a good year. Should be a good year.
Not Lionsgate. Sorry. But I will say, out of all the Scorsese films I have watched, I might like the King of Comedy best. I really liked this movie a whole lot.
It's in my third.
And I will say, I didn't watch Dan's video because I saw they had it a 5 out of 5, but I always do this with his stuff. Is I don't watch his videos until I watch the movies. I mean, even his reviews, sometimes he gets to go to early screenings. He gets to watch them before I do and stuff like that. But I need to go back and revisit it because it's so interesting, though. Because this, more than Taxi Driver, in my opinion, is so similar to Joker. And I think I already mentioned it. I watched Joker, finished at 1 a.m. this morning. And then I watched The King of Comedy while I was in line getting sandbags to put in front of my apartment for this hurricane that's coming. And I think the fact that Joker rips so much from this movie hurts Joker so, it's detrimental because you can't copy every single aspect of this movie. So I think a lot of the interesting elements are taken out. Obviously, the number one thing is, it's a stand-up comedy or stand-up comedian who has this fascination for a late night talk show host, right? But then it's the fact of the characterization of Jerry Langford and also Masha and all the side characters. Joker doesn't have that. It's just Arthur Fleck. And when I watched this movie, it brought down Joker like a half star for me. I saw what Joker could have been in King of Comedy, but because Joker pulls from King of Comedy, it can't be like that movie. It has not a whole lot original beats to it. And what it is original doesn't maybe work. So yeah, I really like this movie a lot. I thought it was very, very good. Very intriguing story. And I don't know, what do you guys think about it? I know Dan shared his thoughts already on socials, but
Yeah, I think so. Like I told you guys, I had watched Taxi Driver back in 8th grade, and then Joker came out in 2019, and I hadn't seen the King of Comedy, but I remember people were saying, "Oh, Joker is so much like Taxi Driver," which I noticed, but I was like, but Joker feels like it feels different from Taxi Driver in certain ways, and like you were saying, it feels more like a comedy. So years later, maybe like in 2022, 2023, I watched the King of Comedy for the first time, and I was like, okay. Now I really see where Joker got like a lot from. And like you said, like when I originally watched Joker back in 2019, I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was, to my knowledge at that point, I was this is super original. Like this is such an interesting idea. Like nothing I've ever seen was like this before. And then you watch the King of Comedy, and you're like, wait, someone already did this. Like what, like 20, 30 years. Whatever, 40 years ago, actually. It's made in the 80s, right?
86.
Yeah,
Or 84.
Yeah, so
82.
someone had already made this. And yeah, King Comedy is great. Robert De Niro again, fantastic performance. And I do think that his performance in this film is better than his performance in Taxi Driver, even though I do think Taxi Driver is the more popular and iconic film. This movie's so underrated, and I think more people should watch it, especially people who love Joker. I feel like they would like love this movie more and maybe Joker a little bit less. But yeah, fantastic film.
Yeah, and I think like Rupert Pupkin, what Joker does is kind of put a Travis Bickle spin on Rupert Pupkin, which
Exactly.
Is what it is, whatever. And it's interesting that like Scorsese was an executive producer on Joker, so like he obviously was aware. We'll get into that, but yeah, I think this movie is perfect. I wouldn't change anything about it. I think De Niro's performance is an all-time great performance. I think it's such an uncomfortable movie to watch with how he just doesn't care about anything in terms of social norms or how you should interact with people. Or, I mean, he is a stone cold narcissist for sure. He, wants to be handed so much. He hasn't even gone out and like performed his gig, publicly. Like he hasn't put in the legwork as a comedian to do anything, but he wants to be a star. Like he wants to be on this show. And so much of that is built around this like parasocial relationship he's built up in his head, which is just so well done. And I think Sandra Bernhard, like, she had no acting training at all before this, and a lot of what she was doing here was just basically improv. Like Scorsese just kind of let her go, and she's
so good. She's so good.
And I almost think she's not bad. I don't want to put her against De Niro, but like she's very, very good, and her scenes are just all excellent. The sequence where it's going back and forth between her at the house with Jerry, and
it's so good
with the cops and all. Like it's just builds tension really well. But I think what this movie does better than Taxi Driver is this character to me is more interesting because he's not as violent. He's, I don't think he would actually hurt anyone. I don't think, but you don't know. But I think what's interesting is you don't really feel sorry for him for a lot of the movie because like I said, he is so entitled and all this shit. But when he gets to do his monologue, when he gets to do his bit at the end, so much of that is just him processing all this stuff that had happened to him that you had no idea. And it's like he needed an outlet to like just say, this has been my life. This is what I've been through. And like, you feel like he hasn't said that to anybody. And I feel like that moment you kind of just, it almost like reframes how you think about him. Like he obviously still has like needs help, but I just thought that was interesting. And makes this character just a little more complex than like a Travis Bickle, or an Arthur Fleck for that matter. So.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to bandwagon a little bit off what Jeremiah said because I watched Joker for the first time in probably 3 years last week in order for this episode. And like, I watched it on Monday and in my review, I wrote, this is better than I remember it being. And then I watched King of Comedy. I immediately went back and dropped Joker's ranking down.
That's exactly what I did. It's so crazy.
Like, yeah, it's insane. I mean, Dan said pretty much everything perfectly about the character, like Travis Bickle, and Rupert Pupkin kind of combined for Joker. But I don't know. Sure. I cared way more about Pupkin than I did Bickle. I think this story is entirely more interesting. My biggest complaint on this movie is just an editing error. When Masha and Pupkin are walking down the street after he just left Jerry Lewis's office. And at like one point they're walking and then the camera cuts and they're standing next to each other and then they're walking and then it cuts back and they're just standing in the same spot. And that's like my biggest complaint on the entire movie.
Wow. I'm surprised that I didn't catch that because we were originally going to talk about Singing in the Rain on this episode, but because we thought Folie À Deux was going to be like that when we heard that it was going to be a musical. Very much not. But in Singing in the Rain, there was some cuts that I just stood out to me. So I'm surprised I didn't catch that. That would have bothered me too.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like that type of stuff usually bothers me. Like there's a big scene like that in Wolf of Wall Street, and it usually will like hurt like kind of how I feel about the movie a lot. And like this one, like I don't know, the movie was just so good to me that it didn't really bother me that much. Like 2 minutes later,
I think something interesting with this movie that I wanted to talk about was there's an interesting distinction between Rupert and is it Masha? Is that how you pronounce her name?
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like she's painted as so like crazy and just completely insane and like ridiculous, and even Rupert kind of like looks down on her and talks down on her when he's doing the same exact thing. But like I feel like her existence almost makes him feel less delusional. But and watching the two of them bounce off each other, like, and each of them kind of has a separate delusion that they're maintaining, and they're like bouncing off one another with, you know, that kind of bubble around them. It's very strange and at times funny to watch, but it's interesting kind of how she's painted and how he's painted, at least in his mind, I think.
What I found most fascinating was you think that they're the same, right? They're both fascinated with Jerry, but they're different. Masha, she is in love with Jerry, like actually in love with him. But, you know, what Rupert is he's in love with his fame. He doesn't care about Jerry. He wants Jerry's position. That's what he wants. And you talked about that end scene, Dan, which, I mean, I think any staple of a good film is to have an incredible last scene. And I guess that's technically not the last scene of the movie, but that's the climax, I would say. Obviously, you get to see all this stuff about his past, which is just genius. And I just found out that the writer of this movie is Paul D. Zimmerman, who only wrote two other
Sesame
movies.
Street. And Sesame
Oh,
Street.
okay, I got you. That's why, because I'm on Letterboxd, I got you. But I will say another thing is that he's actually a decent stand-up comedian. Like, the crowd is loving it. And I got to admit, I laughed at like one of his jokes or two of his jokes. But it's the fact that he's such a narcissist and thinks that he deserves this fame right away is that he is assassinating his own attempt to have that career, because he doesn't want to start from the bottom. He doesn't actually want to build a normal relationship, possibly with Jerry. He could have maybe in that car at the beginning, but he is so focused on what he thinks he deserves that he's self-sabotaging himself, similar to what Travis was doing with the women in Taxi Driver. I thought that was like the biggest thing, because I thought, like Joker, that he was going to be a horrible comedian. He's not. He's actually good. And what that also shows you, I think, is that possibly similar to Joker, is that society in a way failed Rupert because I forgot her name, but the assistant that he talks to, Kathy Long, the assistant that he talks to all the time at Jerry's building, she said, I listened to the tape. I don't think she did. I think he did that whole routine, and maybe she would have been impressed and said, I didn't like, she's like, some of your jokes I need to change. I think she was lying, and she didn't listen to it at all, never gave it to Jerry, because there's not a single joke that does not land with that crowd. And you would think that that's exactly the same stand-up routine. And also, just thinking about it, she would also feel maybe more sympathetic towards Rupert, because she would also get all that information that we got at the end as well. Everything about his childhood, everything about how he was raised, how people treated him. But because she didn't listen to the tape, no one listened to the tape. All that stuff happens because of her.
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
Listen to the tape because of his behavior, because of his actions.
Right.
Like, it's not her fault.
No, but I think that is something that you can dissect from that situation. I will agree with that. But I think that's
and like
the
all
most
he had
like
to do was approach her normal, and like his narcissism led him to push and push and push and push and be so obnoxious and trespass and like get into Jerry's personal space was be there. So like all those things led up to how they viewed him. Like they didn't view him as annoying and someone to be brushed aside in a vacuum. That was his own creation. So
I agree. Yeah, I just think it's interesting that you can kind of dissect that she didn't listen to the tape at all. But I say the biggest misdirect I thought was the fact that he was actually a decent comedian. You would think this entire time, if you're watching this film for the first time, just because of how his mannerisms are, someone like this and just someone who's not had any practice before is not going to be good. But he turns out to be kind of unnatural. But because he is such a narcissist, he just ruins himself. And I will say the end of this film is 100% fantasy, different from Taxi Driver.
Yeah, but I think it also, like, the end does show you the level of obsession there is around, you know, people that can be exploited and people that can be turned into a phenomenon and something for someone else to make, money off of. And we see that all the time. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about like Ryan Murphy with what he does with Netflix, and he does it over and over and over and prints money from it. And people will never, ever stop doing that as long as there are, mentally ill people to exploit. So, yeah, it's a really, really good movie. And I think what's interesting is also Diane Abbott is in Taxi Driver and she's in King of Comedy. And she plays, she's Rita in the King of Comedy. And I think in both of those movies, she's kind of a woman that he just looks at as someone to like impress. And like he's going to use his, status or whatever to, just get her to be what he wants her to be. And it's interesting that same actor is in both movies, and kind of used in a similar way and kind of viewed by the protagonist in the same light as just someone to like, win over and kind of manipulate.
So I would argue that the best scene of the film, the best acting sequence with De Niro is with her, and it's when he's at Jerry's house. How they're having a conversation, but he is so caught up in his own fantasy that the conversation doesn't make sense in a way. Like he's carrying on this conversation, but saying the exact opposite of what you would expect him to say from what Jerry is yelling at him for being in his home. That right there, I was like, this is it. You get to see all these fantasy sequences in this film, but then you actually get to see that in reality, and that's what you're waiting for, And I thought that's what was going to happen at the end with his stand-up special. I thought that was going to be a fantasy and that he was going to be good in his mind, and he actually turned out to be good. And I think, Dan, what you're alluding to is the fact that maybe the society did make books about him and he became this figure that people read about. I don't think that's real. I don't think they made books about him. It makes sense, but I think that would have contributed to him getting out of prison and actually becoming a big stand-up comedian and someone that they're chanting his name. In order for that to happen, you have to have those books. And I don't think that happened at the end with him being a stand-up.
I'm not saying that was real. I'm just saying I think that was a commentary on the way that happens to people.
Okay, my bad.
And I think that's just like, I think this story will be relevant for a long time. Like I think you'll go to watch this in 50 years and it'll still be something that's relevant and people can connect to. So
yeah, I was gonna say that the movie like still feels relevant today as I'm sure it did when it was originally made.
Yeah, and people always have these like weird parasocial relationships where they feel like they, know the people that they, watch on TV and listen to their music. You see it with people like, Taylor Swift. You see it with politicians. You see it with like, with Trump. You see it with people do the same thing with, Democratic nominees. Sometimes like it's people put their entire personality into whoever they follow, and it just.
Can I give you an example, a scary example that I don't know if you saw that went kind of viral recently? It was this woman's post of her sitting next to Evan Peters at an airport. And you're like, okay, it's Evan Peters at an airport, whatever. That's cool that she's sitting next to him. But people found out that if you went to her page, it was nothing but posts about everything Evan Peters for months.
Yeah.
So obviously you can insinuate or you can infer that was not an accident that she was next to him at an airport and she followed him there. Yes. King of Comedy was 1982 and people are still doing that to this day. And it's even, people just can't have a private life anymore,
Yeah, with things so public and like so like chronically online, like I was saying, like a story like this is even more relevant because like it's more accessible to be putting yourselves in situations where you're like meeting like your heroes or meeting people that you see through a screen and like just like taking what you see on screen and making it into reality where you're like following these people or like checking where their location is and actually like seeing them with your eyes in person and making it seem like it was a coincidence, but the whole time it was really a planned out scheme or plot or whatever. So very, very scary stuff that we live in these days, I think.
And the thing with like social media contributing so much to fame, if you are a celebrity, sometimes you're forced to be put into that space. Like the one
Yeah,
thing
for
I was
sure.
thinking about was that I remember a video by Gavin DeGraw he put on TikTok, and literally his TikTok was like, I'm on TikTok because my record company said I have to be, kind of a thing. And that was the joke of it. It's like, hey man, you got to do this kind of a thing. Like this
Mhm.
is part of your contract now. You've got to put yourself out there even more, be even more public than you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think big companies now like just think of social media as like part of a necessity. Like even movies now, you're starting to see all these advertising campaigns for movies on TikTok. Like that's going to be a necessity, and like that was a huge part of Twisters. Like it's been a lot of movies, so it's I think a lot of times just people are kind of told that's where you need to be, but that can also attract a lot of different people. And you see in this movie how like lonely and depressed this guy actually is at home in his basement where he's built this fake studio. Like it's crazy, but he's such a lonely character, and I think those kind of people often end up in those situations.
Do you think that comedians oftentimes have pathetic lives and joke about their pathetic lives as part of their specials? Obviously, that's a way for them to get material, right? You get material based out of your own life.
So one of my friends actually is a professional comedian that I went to high school with, and he has probably had one of the tougher lives of anyone I know from the time he was a kid. And he uses all of that. Like a lot of comedians, and this isn't quite answering your question, but a lot of comedians have been through it, and they use their humor to find, it's a coping mechanism, right? Like we all do that in our regular lives, but especially for comedians, it's a coping mechanism at times to like make it through stuff that's really challenging, and then you can turn that into material and take a negative and turn it into a positive. So yeah, I think that's a very real thing, and I've definitely seen that.
What I caught though, which was interesting, which I wonder if your friend does this, is I think Scorsese or the writer here shows us the fact that they're not always 100% telling the truth. And obviously, Rupert's life is shit, and you believe a lot of it just because of the person he is. But one thing he mentions that stood out to me is that he talks about his mother being dead. His mother is not dead. Yeah. She yells at him down in the basement. So I think that just shows you, like, sometimes.
Or does she, or did he imagine that?
No, wait, no, because I would say no, because you see an imagination of him, right, talking to Jerry in that restaurant, and then you see reality, and it's him talking to himself. And during those reality sequences of him talking to himself, you get his mother yelling at him. So I don't think that would be a dream inside of a dream, or fabricated. I don't think all of that. I think it's on purpose, two separate sequences of reality. I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah, good job, Stone. Oh, I got dead. I got him. What do you think, Jeremiah? I don't know. You seem like you had a thought before I chimed in.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I feel like I'm not remembering the specific of the scene, but if you're saying like it went from like a dream sequence to like a like one root in reality, it wouldn't be like a dream with dream time. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I'll give myself a pat on the back there. That was good.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
But yeah, what do you guys have this rated at? I'm very curious. I know Dan has it a 5 out of 5.
4.5.
I have it at a 4.
I have it a 5 out of 5 as well. Like Dan.
So you said it was your favorite Scorsese stuff?
Let me see what Scorsese's I've watched. That'll be interesting.
This isn't my third.
Yeah, what have you watched?
I haven't watched much. So I'll tell you the biggest one I'm probably missing right now, Jeremiah, is Raging Bull.
Oh, you haven't seen Raging Bull?
I have not.
Bro, I haven't seen Goodfellas. Look at me.
Really?
I one up you, my dude.
Ooh.
I've seen Wolf of Wall Street, Taxi Driver, Killers of Flower Moon, King of Comedy. My bad. Dude, I was looking. Hold on. I thought I clicked on his directing ones. I actually clicked on his acting ones, and Shark Tales was there. I almost said that.
Have you looked at Shark Tale's cast? Like, this isn't even me as like a big shark fan. Like, that cast is wild, and it's so funny that they made a mafia movie for kids.
Nah, it's just you being a shark fan. That's all it is.
Go look at it soon.
But yeah, Wolf of Wall Street. I've watched Shutter Island, Taxi Driver, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Departed, Bringing Out the Dead. That might be it. So there's still a lot that I need to watch.
Shutter Island's another one I'm not a big fan of.
I'm not a big fan of Shutter Island either. I don't think the twist works. I don't know. It's like an impossible thing where I don't know. I already knew the twist going in. So I don't know if that hurt because it's like, it's so bad, like with social media. I feel like you guys think, yeah, it's, if you know something going into it, then is it the same kind of a thing? Like I try to go to so many movies. Like I didn't know what King of Comedy was about. I'm so upset because I saw the tagline before I turned it on and I knew that he kidnapped Jerry. And I was like, damn it. Because the entire time I was waiting for him to do that because I knew that was part of the movie. And I can only imagine how much more I would have been like, holy shit, if I didn't see that. Ugh, pissed me off.
I think the only two I have above this is Casino and Goodfellas.
The other sad thing about this movie was it flopped so hard.
Oh, I saw
like
that,
they made
yeah.
this for $19 million. It made like $3 million. Which,
Oh my god!
It wasn't nominated for anything, which I mean, I feel like that's pretty rare when it comes to a Scorsese picture. I also thought it was rare. We didn't talk about this, but I thought it was really crazy that Jodie Foster was nominated for Taxi Driver. However young she was in that, and she wasn't even in a whole lot of the movie, which was crazy for me. I did know that going into the film, so that was crazy for me to see that. Because I expected her to be in the whole picture, like for a lot of the movie. I mean, she doesn't pop in probably for 40, 45 minutes, I would say. And then when she is there, the first sequence you see her when she gets in the back of the taxi, she leaves for quite a while after that. So I think everyone was just impressed with how much of a presence she had at such a young age.
Kind of on the note that you just said about Scorsese and Oscars, do you know who the first actor in a Tarantino movie to win an Oscar was?
actor in a Tarantino movie to win an Oscar.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but it also might be nominated for an Oscar as well.
I'm just gonna say Christoph Waltz for would it be Inglourious Bastards.
It was.
Whoa! Look at me. Stone's on a roll.
It took him till Inglourious Bastards to get that, right?
So, Jeremiah, I'm glad you're back with us. Jeremiah had some technical difficulties there for a second, but Jeremiah, I have a wild story to tell you guys about Todd Phillips. And I hinted at it before we got on, and Dan's like, "What is it?" I'm like, "I'm gonna wait.
Should I be playing the trailer for this story?
No. Let's wait, because this isn't about the Joker. It's about Todd Phillips, right?
Okay.
So Todd Phillips' first film actually wasn't, I believe, Road Trip is what people think it is. His actual first film was a documentary about a punk rock singer named G.G. Allen, right? This was a guy who was notorious for being very violent at his showings. The documentary is called Hated. Okay, it was made in 1993. He went to film school, and during film school, he was putting so much work into this and so much money, Jeremiah, that he actually dropped out of film school because he couldn't pay for both. And he got so passionate about this project. Anyways, he sent letters to this guy in prison and stuff like this to try. He was in prison, got out of prison, or broke his parole and did shows with Todd Phillips. Like, it was kind of an insane thing. But anyways, this guy had a friend who did artwork, poster art for this documentary. And the friend, I don't know if he met him in prison, but the friend was John Wayne Gacy, a killer clown, serial killer.
Yeah.
Did poster art for Todd Phillips's first film, which was the documentary called Hated.
Damn.
Isn't that wild? Like, you can find the poster on the internet and it literally has John Wayne Gacy's signature on it. Oh my gosh.
That's very crazy. Especially when you think about like what he made later down the line. It's weird.
Yeah, it's just a violent individual. I mean, just watching this documentary about Todd Phillips, even his second film, which was another documentary called Frat House, was about all these, what are they called?
Is this what we're talking about, Stone?
Initiations. Yeah, that's it right there. Yeah.
John Wayne Gacy down here.
Way to pop it up. Yeah, so that was made by him. Yep. But yeah, his second one, Frat House, is about all those all these houses, these fraternities, what they do to these new, what's it called? I was never part of a fraternity. So what's it called with
Russian?
initiations?
Yeah.
Like how violent those can be.
Yeah.
And there's like a bunch of, and there's a bunch of gray area there where a lot of people actually think it was fake and stuff like that. But anyways, his two first films are kind of all about violence. So it doesn't shock me that he was interested in doing Joker. It is about, his first film is about an artist who was very violent towards people. And that's kind of, if you call, stand-up comedy and art, is kind of what Joker is. But I mean, we've all alluded to it during our conversation so far this episode. This came out in 2019 and kind of took over or blew everyone out of the water in expectations of what it could have been, I would say, especially when it comes to the box office and how many people checked it out. And there was also this weird, I don't like using this word, but I will use it here because I think it's appropriate. There's this weird agenda, maybe, to create violence in the theaters. Everyone was so petrified and terrified that this was going to somehow convince people to be violent. And I do like this. I know what they did is they didn't show this in the movie theater where that Dark Knight Rises shooting happened. And I do like that. I think the families of the victims did ask for that. But I have to remember, I remember watching this. I graduated college in 2019 and I was living in Kentucky. And I'm not going to lie, because of all the news outlets saying this, I will check my exits when this movie, I was watching this movie. I was like, okay, one's there. But obviously, this was nominated for many, many Oscars, including Best Picture. I believe it won both score and Joaquin Phoenix were the only ones that it won, I believe. I think Dan's fact checking me right there on it. But yeah, I mean,
I wasn't, but I can.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, drew heavy inspirations. Obviously, we just talked about Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. Drew heavy inspirations from them. But, this is about the Joker and how society betrayed him and created the character that he is. Rewatching this, I think that everything about Arthur Fleck is very interesting. And I do think that Joaquin gives a very, very good performance. It's on his back. I think that's not a or everyone kind of thinks the same thing when it comes to that. Besides that, all the fluff that is around this isn't as good, I believe, as Taxi Driver or as King of Comedy. There's really nothing else there. And I think the one thing, and you guys might agree with this, that stands out to me is everything with Zazie Beetz. That takes away a lot from this movie for me because number one, it's not believable. And then number two, he really doesn't have this relationship with this girl to begin with. Unlike Masha, I really like Masha in King of Comedy. That's what I was missing, a character like this, like that in Joker. Maybe it's in his mother, but his mother's a very one-note character as well. And I think maybe Joker Folie À Deux erases some characterization about her. Maybe. I know they got into a little bit about what she thought of her son. But yeah, I've been rambling for a long time. What do you guys think about this and Joaquin and the Zazie Beetz and all that stuff?
It's funny you said you were checking your exits. I'm not saying that's not a real fear. I was in the Marine Corps at the time that this came out, and I will tell you, I didn't go to the theater because I have that strong of a fear of clowns. And I was terrified to see this in theaters.
Were clowns going to show up?
No, it's
On
just
screen.
seeing the clowns on screen.
Dude, I should have painted my face. That would have been really funny.
That
would have been awful.
I'm literally building it up in me that I'm gonna officially watch the Terrifier franchise. And I've never seen it for that reason.
Sorry for anybody who's just listening. I tried to scare Connor with my Joker DVD.
So these hands are rated E for everybody.
Sorry, keep going.
But yeah, no. So I actually don't think I officially watched this for the first time till 2021, maybe. And even then, I had some issues with it, and then going back and watching it last Monday, like I said, I was oh, this isn't as bad as I remember. So I put it at a 3.5, and then I watched King of Comedy, and I lowered it to a 3. I still think this is enjoyable solely on Joaquin's performance, like you said. I do think he gave an Oscar-worthy performance. I don't know if you guys knew this, but the whole scene where he punches the phone off the wall is completely improvised. which I think is
Yeah.
like fantastic. He like broke his hand doing that, I think.
The thing about Joaquin, and this is a known fact about this movie, they didn't like, what's it called? They didn't do any line readings. Like they didn't know what Joaquin was going to do. So shooting him was very strange. Like he didn't rehearse anything, basically. So all of his movements were all him feeling the character and feeling what the character would do. And that's kind of a problem when it comes to where you put your cameras.
Yeah.
Right. So what they would do is they would have like 2 or 3 cameras on a certain scene at one time because they didn't know where he was going to go. And I think the famous scene when something like this, that spontaneity happens, is him in that bathroom. I think it was just the cinematographer and just Todd Phillips and just Joaquin. And that bathroom scene, I think initially they had him hiding the gun that he just killed those 3 frat boys with, but they didn't think that I don't think he actually, he doesn't do that. And I think Joaquin just thought this is what the character does and just started dancing. And that scene that's kind of iconic, I would say, in this movie was all ad-libbed, And Joaquin is a very interesting individual. And, he does give good performance those. And sometimes that comes with risks.
It's funny we're talking about this because I really don't think those moments work at all. On my last rewatch of this, because he goes into the bathroom and starts dancing immediately after that shooting. I don't get it. I think that scene needed to be something else. I think it feels kind of jarring. And
I think that's the point. I think for the one time in his life, he feels powerful. Like he just killed
jarring in terms of where like it pulls me out of the movie. Like I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like I feel like it takes itself too seriously in that moment, to the point of being like laughable. And I just, for me personally, it doesn't work. I don't know. I guess he expresses his power through like dance, but to me, just for this character, it doesn't fit in the story, and it stops. It reminds me that I'm watching a movie, which I think for a story like this, you really can't. But I think both these movies are just like very self-serious to the point of like, it just turns me off. I think I found some things in the first Joker to be funny. I think I enjoy some moments. I think some moments are actually funny, which is good. And I like this a little bit better this time than I did the last time I watched it. But I don't know. That moment for me didn't work. And I think another thing that feels forced is when he climbs into the fridge. I'm just like, all right, like what? This just feels, again, just forced. I don't really know how else to describe it.
I like that you mentioned like the forced stuff, because the scene in the bathroom doesn't necessarily feel forced to me. I kind of like that moment and like what it represents, as Stone was saying. But I do agree with you on the refrigerator scene. That scene definitely, like, it feels out of left field. It just feels really odd, and not like in a way that's in line with the character. It just feels like Joaquin just doing it,
Doing some shit, yeah.
exactly.
I wonder if that was in the script. I would love to read the script and see like what Joaquin.
It wasn't.
Yeah, I read something about how they were kind of like throwing out the script pretty much every day and just like basically doing whatever just whatever, and just kind of ad-libbing so much of this, which I understand. I think another problem for this movie is, and I kind of want to get into like the problem people had with this, was a lot of people felt this movie is designed to like pity this character, and it's designed to like justify his actions. I think one of the reasons it feels that way is so many of the interactions feel ridiculous in terms of how people treat him and the reactions. Like even on the bus, like there's a child and a mother, the kid's just like laughing, nothing's happening, the mother like bugs out on him, and it's like your kid was just like laughing. The guy is like, that felt so over the top. And I think I made a couple other things. Even Robert De Niro's character, like, why is he so over the top cruel in how he mocks his like what kind of talk show is that? where he's just like he has like a big nighttime talk show and he's just like has a video pulled up and he's making fun of the guy. That felt so overdone to me. And then also the attack on the train, like they just jump him because he's he's just sitting there laughing. Like they just feel, all those characters feel just like
one noted.
So
it's just the same thing.
exaggerated.
Yeah.
And not, it doesn't feel like real interactions. So it feels like it's just trying to drum up pity by these like, oh, everyone's so mean to, poor Arthur. And it's like, these don't feel like real people though. And that's kind of my problem. And Thomas Wayne is kind of another example of that. Like he just treats him like complete dog shit. And like I understand he might be detached to an extent or just be kind of uppity, but it just feels over the top. So I don't know. It's tough.
I think that's the hindrance of this being so similar to King of Comedy, because you do have De Niro who's so excessively mean to Arthur, but the thing is you can't necessarily give De Niro's character Murray any more characterization, because I think you do lean more into being even more similar to King of Comedy. But like I said, because Jerry gets a whole lot of that in King of Comedy. So I feel like because you're trying so hard not to be your own thing, that just, like I said, subtracts from the overall quality of this film, because it's nothing besides Arthur. That's really it. And I do agree. There's one character. What was his name? Randall. Randall's the guy who he kills in his apartment. I actually think that guy wasn't necessarily that mean to Arthur. He just gives him a gun, and I think honestly he was concerned about him, and he gave him the gun, and then Arthur murders him. Go ahead.
Why he killed him was because he told the boss that he tried to buy the gun off of him.
Yeah.
Or the cops, they tried to buy the gun off of him, when in reality he just gave him the gun to give it to him.
Gotcha. Maybe that's what, because I mean, it's a known fact that I think the proper grammatical term is incels. There's a lot of incels who took the wrong message out of this film, and who they saw Arthur as. Like you said, you feel pity for him and you feel like all of his acts were kind of justified. But there's an interesting conversation there, right? Where was that Phillips's fault and not the incel's fault, right? You made this film. Like, I think it might be Phillips, because Dan even sees this movie as, we're supposed to have pity on Arthur, and feel bad for him. And that's what other people thought. But Dan sees that as a flaw of the movie, where other people see that as the movie, as the greatness of the film, right? That's what the film is trying to get across. When Phillips has said, no, it's not. In order for me to show you that, let me make Joker Folie À Deux. Right? So it is so interesting when, I guess you can also compare it to Fight Club, I guess is one of the most famously known movies that people have misinterpreted. But I didn't. So is that on Phillips? Is that on the audience? Like, is it both?
I think filmmakers are responsible for understanding like basic messaging in their movies. No, like this isn't like some kind of deep subtext. It's like the crux of the movie. And then I think you pull in this economic disparity message as well, where it's just like, because Arthur shot these three wealthy men, now we all hate the rich because the rich are mean. It's just like, this is the most surface level bullshit. Like, the rich are bad. Coming from Todd Phillips, who's a millionaire, right? Who's anti-union. Todd Phillips. Making a movie about the rich are bad. Like, dude, please stop it. And I feel like that gets tied into Arthur's message, and which I guess makes him more relatable in a way, but that wasn't his point in the first place. I don't think he had any kind of grand scheme, obviously, but it just makes it feel like, again, the movie is siding with him, and it's like this anti-elite thing, but it's just hypocrisy to me, and like just kind of tiring. And I think there's moments in this, like the Zazie Beetz reveal of like, oh, he was never actually with, like, please, dude, like like that moment's hilarious. Like, it's so funny. I was gonna make a video about it and put it in my dumbest movie moment thing, because it's so stupid.
Because you
Like,
know it right
almost to the
away
point of, like, being
because
satire. Like, I don't
the first thing
understand.
she says is "You're so funny," and you're like, "Okay, well that's not true."
And then like she just like shows up like so conveniently at the most random of times. Like I remember at one point he was at like a I don't know, like he was just standing outside and like she just magically rolls up and I'm like, okay, like obviously not. Yeah.
Yeah, she's at his comedy show with like a spotlight on her as his like show transitions into being watchable. It's just like another thing I wanted to say was I feel like his laughing condition is way more prominent in the first movie. And
It
I don't
definitely
quite
is.
understand because they talk about how he's on like 7 medications. So he's obviously on medication for that. But it's still very much affecting him. Then in the second movie, he stops taking his meds, but the laughing condition isn't there at all.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's there like maybe once or twice. I was obviously that's a small detail, but I was just like I don't quite understand how that comes and goes.
That's
I don't know.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people say that's a nitpick, but that's a big thing. I mean, it's a big thing about his character that's there on purpose,
sure.
and kind of just going away from it. It's like a huge thing.
And I think that
Yeah, and
might
if you want to give him this condition, like
Oh, go ahead.
no, that's all, Jeremiah. Sorry.
I was gonna say I think that might be like another like thing with Joaquin's improvisation of
Yeah.
like just being like so like loose with like his like his portrayal as a character like deciding things on a whim and maybe like on the first Joker film he really wanted to integrate this crazy laugh but on the second one maybe he wasn't feeling it and then he just didn't want to do that anymore and that maybe that's like why it showed up like that in the second film because it's definitely not as apparent as it is in the first one because in the first one it happens like every 2 minutes you hear it all the time but in the second one it's just not there as much at all.
I will say really quick too. I think it's effective in that makes me have empathy for this character. Like it feels so painful, and it feels like
Yeah,
he
it
does it to the
does.
point of like it becomes like a cry, and then it becomes like he like gags and chokes, and it's
Yeah,
like
it looks like it hurts.
yeah. And you imagine like going through life like you know how most people express joy is something that's painful to you, and even at the beginning when he goes to that comedy show, he's watching that other performer. He seems so like he seems like happy, and he seems like invested in. He's like taking notes. Like he seems like you kind of could root for him, and like he does seem like you know. But as soon as he kills those kids like 30 minutes into the movie, and
It's very fast.
it's too fast. It's too fast. Like the way
And I
that's
know,
paced is not
and
right.
I noticed that on my rewatch. I was like, this is like happening very, very, very fast. A lot faster than I remembered it to be.
Yeah, and like we talked about with Taxi Driver, it's this like slow, like you know, changing of his ideologies, and like that stuff is not magic. Like it that like worms its way into people's life, I think, and I think it just feels so fast. And once he does that, I'm just checked out with this character. Like even if he had like shot the first guy, self-defense, he's getting jumped, he's getting beaten on the ground. Okay, in some states he wouldn't go to jail. When he chases the third guy down and just executes him, like you're just a murderer, and like he's a coward, and like that's it. And I struggle at that point to care what happens to this guy. And like I said, when they start pulling in all the like economic messaging, I'm just like, this is so just boring and surface level and silly. Like again, coming from you know Todd Phillips, it's just like it loses me really quickly. And there is stuff I like about this movie. Like some of it I think is funny. I think there are some moments that are really stunning. Like even the scene in his room where he has the white face paint on and he kills that guy. And Leigh Gill is the little person who's in both.
He's a good
movies.
actor. Yeah.
He has, I think, the best scene in both movies for me.
Yes, I was about to agree because he's, you know why, Dan? It's because he's the only one in this entire movie who's from Gotham that has a different viewpoint towards Arthur.
He looks at him like the audience.
Yes.
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 Yeah. Which is really effective. He's just like he sees Arthur as someone who he's seen the better parts of Arthur, so he's just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what is happening? What's going on? And then in the second movie, he's like, you like damaged me seriously. Like you did something to me where I can't look at you the same. But that moment feels real. Like if you saw your friend do something like that, like you'd be like I feel like it just feels real.
Yeah.
And that's such a good scene. And this movie does have good moments, but when you look at the message as a whole and you look at what this movie's really doing, and then we haven't even really talked about like tying this into this is the Joker. Like it's ridiculous. Like this movie should have taken place outside of anything to do with any type of safe IP. They should have just written a character.
Yeah.
You want to make a modern take on these classic Scorsese movies with Scorsese's blessing, and he's there, giving you money. That's awesome, but don't then lean on the most popular character in fiction. Like it's just lame.
$1 billion, baby, $1 billion.
All tie-ins with like Thomas Wayne and then Bruce
and
like
Bruce and Alfred. Like
yeah, I'm like,
come on, man. Yeah, it's just too much, and like it. I do respect it. They made this for like $50 million, made a lot of money. That's cool. But then when you try to go back to that well again for $200 million, it's not working.
Just take out every comic book character name that and is this movie as effective? Like if this is just a random failed comedian who's trying to be a failed comedian,
it's better.
And yeah, exactly. It's a distraction, is what it is.
Yeah,
by adding all those people,
and you're just pulling in so many expectations, and like just everyone has a different view of the character, and you have to think about. Even his quotes around the second movie about this Joker would like look up to Bruce Wayne and Batman or whatever and think he's an alpha. It's like, what are you talking about? Like you're just digging a grave for yourself. Like just stop talking. Don't worry about any of that stuff because it doesn't matter. None of that matters. Like I don't know. It's just it's frustrating. I liked it a little bit more. Like I said, I gave it 2.5 stars this time.
I gave it a 3.5.
I'm at a 3.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will say outside of the story itself, like just as a filmmaker, I love the way that both of these films are shot. Like the cinematography is like so strong in my eyes, and I just love that like the color palettes and the color grading. It's all very strong to me. Like I feel like each frame just has a beauty to it. Like in terms of how I like in the terms of the way that I like films to be shot, I really love the style of how this film is shot and Joker Folie À Deux. So yeah, huge fan of the cinematography in both of these movies.
Which movie looks better to you, Jeremiah?
I honestly think the second one looks better in my opinion.
I would say the first one because I like how much of the city it shows. It has more opportunities to show you different things, where the other one feels so confined.
I feel like the second one too, being longer, I feel like it feels a little repetitive visually for me, and I feel like there's a lot of visually interesting moments that are more distinct in the first movie.
Sure.
Whether that be the scene in the hospital where he has the green wig on and it's all white with all the kids around him.
Looks good, and the city in the windows.
I think that's one of the funniest moments when the
he's like ah!
Yeah. No. And you can tell like he did a lot of work studying like Chaplin and that kind of entire era, and like Joaquin did put a lot of work into this performance. Also we didn't mention this at all, but the score, the woman's name is Hildur Guðnadóttir. She's from Iceland. It's the best part about the movie, in my opinion.
100%.
I feel like it tricks me into thinking I'm watching something that's a little better than. But it's really, really good. It's all the cellos and it's.
I was gonna say you might not like that bathroom scene, but when that low cello comes in, I'm like,
yeah,
ooh, okay.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. And she was working hand in hand with them and looking at the script and like really figuring out like what should this sound like. So amazing job to her. She did Chernobyl as well.
And Tar. I saw she did Tar too.
Yeah, which another banger. But yeah, I wish I liked this movie better, but I don't right now.
You like it better than Joker Folie À Deux, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit.
So let's get into it. So I find it very interesting. Oh, I will say one thing I want to say, last thing about Joker is that just watching King of Comedy, I now realize that the very last scene of Joker is pulled directly from King of Comedy, where it's him running through the halls and like the guys are chasing him. There's a scene exactly like that in King of Comedy in the office building of Jerry.
Yeah, and then even where the you pull out on all the screens, it's kind of the same
Yep.
thing too. Like it's
Yep.
Can I say one more really quick thing about
Good,
Joker?
good.
One thing I found strange is with his mother, the way the movie frames his mother is like a straight up villain, ignoring the fact that she was in a relationship where like she was being beaten and like abused and like it completely ignores her perspective, which I understand is purposeful, but then he murders her for that. And it's just like,
which adds to him of being a hero, you know, the fact that they villainize his mother and he kills his mother because
it's
she
strange
did
to
him wrong.
ignore- Yeah, to ignore like everything that she went through as well, and all the ramifications of that on her mental health, which is clearly completely obliterated. So it's another thing in this movie that just like rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. That's my last thought.
All right, Joker Folie À Deux. So do we leave? Is Arthur in the exact? Because a lot of people have compared this film to an epilogue, that it feels like an attachment of something that could have happened after the end of the first Joker. So do we leave Arthur and I'm assuming he's in Arkham Asylum, or
I think so.
In the very last scene where he says you wouldn't
Yes.
get it. Yeah, I think so.
and then in this he's no longer there. He's in, what is it called? Just Arkham Prison.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously Folie à Deux means a shared illusion. I will say I do like the beginning of this film where it's an homage, it looks like, to like Warner Brothers cartoons. I really like that a lot. Big fan of
Yeah.
animation. I thought that was cool. But then we open up with Arthur in Arkham Prison, or Gotham's prison, it seems like, and he's taking medications. And there's randomly Brandon Gleeson in this film as a prison guard who none of them are treating him well. And also something that stood out to me was the fact that you guys said that he no longer laughs a lot in this movie. Something that's weird that they add to this movie that necessarily wasn't in the first movie is that they're like, tell me a joke. That's not something he did in the first film. I don't think he wasn't just randomly telling jokes. Maybe it's just because they saw him on the Murray Franklin show. Anyways, but it seems like on a trip to, was he seeing his lawyer or was he getting medication? How does he see Lady Gaga? What is he doing? I know he goes somewhere else in the prison.
I
think he was seeing his lawyer. I think that's
Yes.
what it is. And that's the big thing about this movie, right? Is that
the
he
first
has,
time he passes the singing therapy room.
yeah.
Yeah, he was meeting his lawyer.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about this movie that maybe a lot of people weren't expecting. I mean, this movie wasn't planned. It really wasn't. What happened is the first movie came out before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic was, happening, Todd Phillips and Joaquin were just sitting there not doing anything. And they're like, well, what did we just do? Oh, yeah, we just did Joker. Maybe we should think about something for that. So that's where this idea came from. And this entire movie really is a courtroom, or leading up to a courtroom session. And what they're trying to do is this lawyer, her name is Marianne Stewart, right? She is trying to convince the jury and the court that actually the Joker, actually Arthur Fleck has split personality syndrome, and that you have Arthur and then you have Joker. And because of his mental instability, he wasn't knowing that he was committing these crimes of killing 5 people. And one, he tells the crowd later, is that he actually killed his mother as well. And I thought that was interesting that they were trying to take that angle. And I think that's this entire movie. I thought the musical aspects were interesting. I thought whatever Harley was supposed to be was interesting as well. And I feel like he sees her as he's going to meet his lawyer. He hears singing, and she's singing in this prison group, it looks like, because she's beautiful. And I think she also does the gun to her head thing that automatically catches Arthur's attention, like, oh my gosh, she knows who I am, kind of a thing. She is, in a way, and I said this in my review, a personification of the city of Gotham. Like, she is someone that Arthur can talk to see what the people are thinking about him. And like I said, this is a bunch of I've been thinking about this movie for a week now, ever since I watched it last Monday. I think there's a lot of this could have worked is the one thing I keep telling myself. But I saw somebody say like my theater was packed, and I'm happy that nobody left during my showing, because there's a lot of people who are saying that people have walked out. And I talked about this at the beginning, but this is failing miserably at the box office, horribly, and it's the worst reviewed comic book movie ever on CinemaScore. So basically, that means word of mouth, which means after this weekend, it's going to bomb even more horribly. I didn't have anybody, I don't think, walk out. I wonder how people gauge what walking out is, because I just think about the fact that people are going to the bathroom, and I don't really pay attention if they come back or not. You know, how do you know they walked out? Anyways,
I think
but
you
it felt like
gather their things or like clearly leave with like bags or something.
they're just like marching away, kind of a thing. But anyways, it just felt like a weird energy. Like everyone was just sitting there, not knowing. Like a lot of people were laughing at sequences that I think they shouldn't laugh at. It just felt awkward. That was my number one word I used with this movie, is that every time a musical beat comes in, I think it slows everything down. And one thing I mentioned on Brandon's video that he talked about that I don't think he even knew about, Jeremiah, this is where I'll lead into your conversation, or, you know, your thoughts on this movie, because you're the one who liked this out of all of us the most. I do not know where $200 million went. I do not know.
Yeah.
To a budget. And my idea, because I like musicals a lot. I showed it. Did I show it on our last episode? I showed it on live. I have Mamma Mia 1 and 2 over here, man.
Uh-huh.
I like musicals, and my thought going into this as a film lover and paying attention to the budgets of films, like I cannot wait until the musical sequences happen. I can only imagine how long they go, how much stuff is there, and then every musical sequence is like one verse of a song almost, it feels like, and then they stop it. I don't know if Gaga was that expensive. I don't think this was shot during the pandemic, because that really inflates budgets. This was shot after the pandemic, I believe. So that's like my biggest question mark on the movie. And the biggest thing is I think that this should have been more of a musical. They should have gone more into that area. Like we were gonna talk about Singing in the Rain. But I think with how serious this movie is trying to be like the first one, you just can't do that. So in a sense, the musical was a bad idea.
Okay, so for me, specifically with this movie, okay, I didn't watch any trailers for it. I didn't really I knew it was a musical, right? Because everyone had been talking about it on TikTok. I knew it was a musical, but I didn't really know too much about the film. I didn't know too much about the story. I didn't watch a trailer, like I said. So I went in, and at this point, everyone on TikTok was saying, "Yo, the movie's not good. It's bad." I'm looking on Letterboxd. Everyone's giving it 2 stars, 1.5 stars, half star. So I'm like, dang, man, this movie, people aren't liking it. But I went yesterday with my girlfriend, and I was like, and she was telling me, she was like, a lot of people don't like this movie. And I was like, yeah, but you never know. We might like it. So, we went in with an open mind. And I don't know, something about this movie, it caught me off guard because I had such low expectations. And I was like, I don't think that this movie is as bad as people are saying. Do I think it's a great movie? Definitely not. But I don't think it's a bad movie either. And the musical aspects, at least for me, they worked. But now that you say the $200 million dollar thing, I could see where you would want them to be a little bit bigger and a little bit more grand. But my initial watch on it, I thought that they worked. But yeah, the whole $200 million thing is daunting. That's really interesting. I wonder where that all went.
I think that's crazy to me too. I didn't even mention it, is the fact that this basically just takes place in 2 locations, which also bugged me too, because I like that about Joker. I like that you get to see so much of Gotham, New York City, but so much of Gotham. This just takes place in the prison or in the courtroom. That's it. And I feel like that's not really an exciting narrative. Like Dan talked about it, I feel like it gets kind of repetitive a lot.
Yep.
I think one thing for me is I like movies that are in simple like one location or 2 locations, very a small number of locations. Mm-hmm. And for me, I like the fact that we were only in a courtroom or only in the prison that he was in, and then we would shift to these these musical numbers where he was like either on like the talk show stage or on like a rooftop. Like I kind of like that we didn't have too many locations. I don't know. It felt very small in scope, and I really like that as opposed to the first one that felt not grand, but it felt a little bit all over the place. This one felt a little bit more condensed, and I could see where you might see like where it might feel repetitive, but to me it didn't feel that way. I don't know.
I say I feel like the first one felt like a journey of him becoming the Joker,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that maybe prison, breaks that down for him. And Dan said in his review, and it's the only comment that I left on this, but then we hinted at it in talking about the original Joker. My biggest issue is there is this background noise in this movie of Gotham just worshiping him, right? And what he stands for.
Yeah.
And I was really excited because that's another thing. Like, we don't get any characterization of Gotham in the first movie. It's just everyone thinks the exact same thing. Like we were talking about, everyone treats Arthur almost the exact same way.
Yeah.
So I was really excited when the turn happened with Lee Quinzel, which is because that's a dumb name, but Lee Quinzel, Lady Gaga. I'm like, oh, okay. Now we're really going to get a look into the psyche of this city, right? Why do they see him this way? And she makes up this story about her life, and it's not true. You don't get really anything from Gaga in this movie. And I think a lot of the annoying people went in this movie not liking the fact that she was in it, and everyone who was normal and sees that she's a good actor and has potential was really excited about it, especially because it was a musical. But to me, there's not really story there really for her character unless it's lost in the song. And I've got to admit, I have a knack for not being able to get everything when it comes to lyrics of a song. But it seemed like to me that she was just hired there for her voice. But then, because you don't go full out musical, I don't believe they pre-recorded anything. Like they were singing on the spot. And they aren't projecting like an actual musical, like how far Gaga can really go with her voice. It's more talking, singing in a way, especially when it comes to Joaquin Phoenix. So then you limit kind of why you hired her, like where she can go. So then it's like, if you don't have a story for a character, if you don't have her singing, like what's the point?
I'll disagree with you on a few things, Stone. First of all, I don't think she has like potential. I think she's a great actor, especially when compared to like a lot of people acting today. But
I would say that because she doesn't have a big filmography. That's why I said that.
I think I think her character does have a big point. I think the point is she's some rich kid who can do whatever she wants. She can walk in and out of there, and she idolizes Joker in the same way someone like Ryan Murphy idolizes the Menendez brothers. It's like the exploitation, and she likes him to be like a freak and someone to, gawk at and idolize. But it's like that's not actually her life, and she can step in and out of that whenever she wants. So I think it's kind of representative of people that can step into someone that has nothing to do with them, someone from a completely different walk of life that's been through things that they'll never understand, and just be like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like keep being you, like almost in like a freak show kind of way. But she also like really manipulates him. She is like the villain of the movie.
Yeah,
like,
there's at one point of the movie like where he realizes that like she admitted herself in and and was lying about stuff. Like he was like, so like you put yourself in here, then you like walked out, and then she was like, yeah, and then he was like you're crazy. So to him to us, like we see him as like the crazy person, but to him, like this is the idea of what a crazy person is, like the idea that someone would admit themselves into this situation that he's in. He sees that as someone who's truly crazy. So I think that's interesting.
I also just think this movie, to me, I wanted to like this movie. When I heard this was a musical, I was excited. A lot of people were pissing their pants about it. I was happy. I was like, this is going to be cool. What they actually do is like, it just feels like, to me, it feels like someone that he hasn't made a courtroom drama or a musical, and he just tries to do both. And as a courtroom drama, this to me fails. Like I've seen, 12 Angry Men. I've seen To Kill a Mockingbird. I've seen Philadelphia. I've seen
My Cousin Vinny.
Mississippi Burning. My Cousin Vinny is an excellent courtroom drama. Like, and it's all in how it's written. It's all in the believability of the dialogue. Like, judges and lawyers function in a very particular way, and like it has to feel real. Like it has to be genuine. It has to be really, really well written. And we saw
especially
that with
when you're
Anatomy of-
presenting the movie so seriously, I would say.
Yes, if you're gonna make a movie take itself this seriously, you have to actually write it like it's taking itself seriously as a courtroom drama. So that to me just didn't work. But also the music, like a lot of it felt just reserved. Like it's Joaquin, and I liked what he was doing at first, but then it's just like the seventh time he's like kind of half talk singing quietly in a monotone voice. I'm just like, okay, is there anything more we can get out of this? Like you have Lady Gaga with like incredible range, and it's so just like dialed back and quiet and repetitive, and like I liked some of the like the rooftop sequence, stuff like that. Like these two people are, not the most sane. Like get interesting with it. Like do whatever you want. You literally have flexibility to create these sequences of them imagining or Arthur imagining whatever you can possibly think of. And if you're going to spend $200 million, spend it on that. Like, and really go big with the music. Some of the musical moments are like my favorite moments of the movie, but a lot of what's between them, there's 2 hours and 20 minutes here. If you write down what actually happens in this movie, it is not much. And it's like, I feel like it's a lot of like Arthur walking back and forth to like meetings and stuff. It's like, I don't know.
I will say a big question that I have, like, is Lee, right? Like Lady Gaga's character, because you talked about her, because that's what I went off about, and you said, let me have an argument. You had a good argument. Is she more like the guards, or is she more like Gotham, or is she both?
Probably more like Gotham, I guess. But like, and again, and Jeremiah, if you like these movies more, I would say, do you have a sense of what does Gotham see in Arthur? In both movies, is it the same in both movies? Is it different? Like, what? Can you explain that to me? Because I don't understand.
Yeah, like on that front, I totally agree. I feel like Gotham doesn't really have like a clear voice or vision. So on that front, I definitely do agree with you. Like especially in this movie, like you're not really seeing the city at all. Like you're only really like only towards the end of the film, and I guess like some of the stuff in the court, like you're seeing some of the like civilians, but really only at the end of the film, and yeah, really only at the end of the film you're seeing like Gotham as a whole. So like this film doesn't really flesh out Gotham City at all, or the people within it. So yeah, I do agree with you on that. And that's one of the things that like that detracts my score from this movie. Like I said, I have it at a 3.5. I don't love this movie, and that's definitely one of the things that detracted from it.
So that's why I'm so interested with the Lee character. That's why I asked that, because then you said like she is this very rich person, which is true. That it seems like she was a psychiatrist or went to school for that, so she knows how
went
to
grad school for psychiatry. Yeah.
Right, knows how to read these people and manipulate them. So is she doing that just for fun, as an evil rich person who's just being a bully like the guards are to Arthur, or does she have that background and Gotham has made her insane, so she uses that background and the insanity of Gotham, and that's who she is? Because like I said, I want so much more context to why Gotham is the way it is. So that's why I'm so desperate to see Lee as Gotham, right? But I don't know for sure if she is. I don't know if she has a different mindset towards Arthur and sees him a different
Gotham
way.
would hate her though. Like I think the people that are idolizing the Joker, or people that are lower class or whatnot, she'd be one of the people that they're like rallying against. But I think the questions you're asking, I don't think the movie really knows.
Yeah,
Like her turn at the end where she's just like, I'm the Joker now, kind of like she's in the pain and she's angry at him for giving up. Like her arc, when you really lay it out, doesn't quite make sense.
Okay, that's maybe why I'm having so much difficulty with it. I was like, guys, tell me. You're like, I don't know.
I definitely see her more as like more in line with the guards than Gotham.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes more
Yeah.
sense than when you have the double whammy of like her hurting Arthur and then the rape scene of what the guards did to Arthur, like back to back. And it's like, this is why Arthur the way Arthur is, kind of a thing.
I just think when you look at these movies from like a mental health perspective, the problem with it, that we didn't talk about at all with the first movie that I also have is like the whole mentally ill people are dangerous, violent killers is so fucking stupid and lazy and just ridiculous. And it's one of the reasons that like I just can't stand Split. Split takes like a real condition and it's just like, look at this literal monster. This guy literally turns into a monster as one of his personalities and like abducts kids. Like, this is a real thing. And like, what's strange about the second Joker movie is you go into it with the idea that basically Arthur has dissociative identity disorder, which most times comes from kids that are abused in a horrible way, whether like, and that which happened to Arthur. And basically your brain creates a space for you to go to that's someone that's like a different person. So you can become that other persona to like protect yourself. So I feel like that makes sense for Arthur, right? If that's what he went through as a kid. But then this movie heel turns and says, no, he's not, he doesn't have that condition.
Yeah.
It just,
I actually-
so he's just this, what is like, what, from a mental health perspective, what are these movies saying outside of just, there aren't enough social services for these people. And that's bad. Like, no shit. Yes.
I'm
I
happy you
just
brought that
don't-
up, Dan, because my wife has a bachelor's in psychology, and not that, you know, she doesn't have a doctor, so she can't actually diagnose people, but she knows her shit. And she literally talked about that when we watched Joker together. And it's also why she complained about why she would never like Joker or anything like that, because of the picture it paints people with mental health in.
Yeah, and it's just, but when you really think about like the course of that, his mental health evaluation in second movie, it makes no sense. Like, it makes no sense at all. And what is the final statement? Is he like, what is his diagnosis? What it just, do you guys think this movie answers that, or like
They're using mental health as like a plot, right? If there wasn't, because people have split personality disorder, probably, right? So that wasn't really a thing in the first movie, and they decided to make that a main plot point in this. That's what the lawyer is trying to say that he has. They introduced something entirely new, but then at the end they strip that all away and they say, no, he's just a bad person.
They don't
So you-
directly say it in the first one, but they like hint at it pretty heavily.
Do they?
I don't think they do.
I don't know. I got a lot of this like from, I listened to the Raiders episode about
Right,
Trevor
Raiders and the right and
Lawrence.
left,
Yeah, and the
like
writing, the different laughs, you know, the way he acts is like when he's in his makeup versus when he's just Arthur. Like, they hint at it pretty heavily.
I think it's how it's framed. And again, in the first movie, when you couple it with like serious abuse as like 6 or 7 years old, like that is reality. Like, that's how that works. So it's just, I don't know. I just think these movies weren't well researched, like in that way. They weren't intentional with how they approach mental health. And like, when there are real people like Arthur out there, and there's tons of those people, and a lot of people on the street. I mean, you know, I live in Philadelphia. Like, homelessness is a problem, and mental health conditions are rampant in those people. And like, to just trivialize it and be like, well, Joaquin Phoenix is crazy. Like, this movie doesn't actually say anything, though. It's just like, I don't know, man. I've seen this plenty of times before. It's difficult. And I know some people will just be like, you know, just have fun with it. It's a movie. But like, it's
so serious. It's so serious.
Well, those are definitely valid points to be bringing up for sure.
yeah.
So yeah. I'm trying to think, like we haven't talked about it, but the scene with, you know, the small person again, I think they make fun of the fact that his name's Mr. Bubbles.
Yeah,
right?
The
Puddles,
actor's name is
Puddles.
Puddles.
Leigh Gill.
Right.
Is he the same guy from the first one?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they bring him in, and it's really good because he basically says Arthur, like, he's like, I saved you, my guy. And it's really weird because he's doing like a Foghorn Leghorn impression because he's pretending to be. It's like such a serious. No, it's such a serious moment of the film. You're like, holy shit, like this is really good. And Joaquin Phoenix is like, do you think that I did that? It's like, okay, you're ruining this right now. But basically, Mr. Puddles is his clown name. No, it's his real name. That's like the whole thing. And Arthur's kind of making fun of him. He's like, no, dude, that's my actual name. But basically, Arthur's like, I saved you, my guy. I'm not a bad person. He's like, Arthur, I cannot sleep because of what you did. I haven't been able to get any rest since it. Like, you've messed up my life permanently because of what I saw. And it's really interesting because Arthur, like society, Arthur has ruined this person's life. Like, how is he any better than the guards? How is he any better than Lee? And it's a really interesting conversation there for him to look inward and be like, yo, I am the problem. But then right after that, you show Lee manipulating him and the guards abusing him. So that's completely gone. Like, it's him looking inward to himself. And then all of a sudden you have two other groups of people doing even worse things toward, like, we get it. People are horrible towards him. But like, how does he see himself? And it's more like we're supposed to see it through actions rather than nonverbal interactions, possibly. Or, we're not allowed to think for ourselves, kind of a thing. I don't know.
And the reason they used that accent stone was so that they could let it drop and break, so that they could show the effect that Gary was having on him, which I understand, but I still thought it was a little bit silly. But
that was a quick turn.
Yeah. But, spoiler alert, but him having the heel turn, at least for me, Jeremiah, of like, yeah, I'm not the Joker. This was just me. I killed those people. That just felt like what was the driving for that? To me felt like a heel turn that didn't quite make sense. It just felt rushed, like in a movie that's long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I felt like that moment kind of deleted a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of like erased a lot of what the film was building up in a way, and I didn't like that moment at all. And I feel like the end of the film is such a like what? Oh, are we talking spoilers at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the film where like the building gets blown up, I feel like that's such a cop out because like everything just gets like blown up, and then we just see
Deus Ex Machina, like
yeah. I don't know, like I didn't really I didn't love that aspect of the film at all, really. And like I think what I really loved was like the first 45 minutes of the movie. I really enjoyed those moments of the movie, and then like the middle aspects, there were parts that I loved a lot and some parts that I didn't like, and then the end of the film I didn't really like at all, if I'm being honest. So the movie was like a huge mixed bag for me, and maybe on rewatch I'll be more in line with what everyone's like thinking, but like
maybe you'll like it more.
Maybe, but like from when I went in, the expectations were so low, and I think it hit something, and I saw the potential. And I saw like a tunnel, and like I saw the quality at the end of the tunnel, and maybe that's what pulled me through it. I don't know.
I'm scared, man, because there was this announcement that came out right as this movie was released, and it's the fact that these studios are putting together like these fandom groups that are going to be, Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Marvel, and ask them like, hey, what do you guys want in movies? And I feel like this was such a big swing from Todd Phillips, right? No DC fan of the Joker would have told Todd Phillips to do a musical with Lady Gaga. I respect him. That's balls. That takes balls to do that. And because he made $1 billion, I feel like he had a blank check and he could do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And like Dan said, some people who know, Lady Gaga's potential and how she is as an actor, not potential, how she is as an actor and her singing voice, and who are fans of musicals and were excited for this. But because it's going to fail really bad, I think it gives justification to maybe you should listen to the fandoms. Like, this is going to be negative on movies. Like, I really wish this would have worked because it would have allowed other filmmakers to take big swings like this.
But what's the actual lesson here? The actual lesson here is don't make this for $200 million. It's stupid.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
We've been talking about this all year. if you want to take chances, just make sure success is reasonable. Like, make sure success is actually reachable. And, you know, if you're categorically dismissing this movie because it's a musical, I think that's incredibly stupid, to be honest. Give it a chance. There is stuff to like here. Like, it's not just garbage, but I have problems with the story. I think it's too long. I think it's poorly paced, but you know, they did care about it. It is well acted, and some of the music really works. It's such a mixed bag. I'd like to watch it again. But yeah. Don't just categorically dismiss it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you think it deserves that? I think it has like a D on cinema. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it opened with weaker than Madam Web.
There's
so much hate for this movie because it's a musical, to be honest. There's a lot of bias towards this film that shouldn't be there.
But I thought it was common knowledge that this was a musical, no?
It's the thing is that they did try to like hide it. That's the thing. That's really annoying. I get it too, but
we
obviously
we knew so long ago, dude. We knew so long ago. And like, I think people that were just, again, categorically angry about that. And again, I didn't like the movie, but like, I was excited about the movie. And I think everyone is using this as a chance to like curb stomp it because they were angry about this 6 months ago. Which is not quite, it's disingenuous to an extent, but
yeah.
I mean, Dan, when you're talking about the budget, like the budget is, imagine this was 50 mil again. It wouldn't be that big of a thing. And I mean, I know me and you talk about budgets a whole lot, and I'm fascinated. And I want to do a deep dive when the film comes out about the budget of The Brutalist, because that's been very interesting. Because supposedly, I don't know the numbers, right? But I know that was shot on 70 millimeter film, and it's like 3.5 hours long. And the combination of that is a lot of money. And I think it came out that movie, they thought it was $10 million. It's only $6 million. And at a Q&A, the director was like, they're like, how did you do this, my dude? Like, it's basically the number one question. And he says, when it comes to big budget films, people do not care about wasting money. He said this, and I quote, like, this is almost direct quote, producers will go out there and get meals that are like $15,000.
Yeah.
And he's like, I used my money very wisely and what was important. And I can only imagine how many $15,000 meals happened on this set and happen with every Disney production and everything like that. And my biggest thing too is I feel like this is another thing. There was a lot of rewrites of this movie as well. The number one clue to that is there's a lot of deleted scenes. People have been seeing that in the trailers. There's a lot of scenes in the trailers that don't appear in this movie. And that's something that also racks up your budget. And in my opinion, I know it happens a whole lot, but I also think that's not a very strong script if you're constantly rewriting it when you start filming.
Yeah, for sure.
So that also doing that, that's what happens with a lot of Marvel movies. I'll never forget Katie O'Brien saying that, going from Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then she went to Love Lies Bleeding. She said Ant-Man and the Wasp, every single day was Quantumania. She was in that film. Every single day was different. Like, they were constantly changing things. But when it comes to Love Lies Bleeding, she's like, they're like, we have a script and we only have a certain number of days to shoot this with the budget that we have. So we're going to get this done super fast. So I'm so fascinated with budgets, man. Like, it's that in box office, it's just, I want to know how these things are made. Itemized. Give me itemized. How many $15,000 meals happened?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you have this? You have this at a 2, right, Dan?
Yeah. Like I said, I'd like to watch it again. I'd like to watch it. I'd honestly like to watch this back to back with the first movie and just look at it as a cohesive story. But right now, 2.
Did you rewatch the first film for this pod?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But like almost a week after, I guess. So.
Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot Zazie Beetz is also in this movie. She's another person put on trial she really adds nothing. It's just like, okay, we kind of knew that, but whatever. I have it at 2.5. I think I'm going to keep it there. I was thinking about dropping it down, but I think I'm going to keep it. Oh yeah, Harvey Dent's randomly in this.
Yeah, Harvey Dent is in the movie. Yeah.
That was funny, man. But yeah, the joke. At least we know that it's done.
Yeah.
And everyone's really happy about that. Oh, also, that's another thing that's interesting is there was no test screenings for this.
Really? They should. If you're gonna take a big swing like this, definitely do a test screening. The test screen.
I don't know why. Like I said, I think maybe Todd Phillips just had so much power, and he's like, dude, I gave you $1 billion movie on a 50 mil budget. Like, just trust me, kind of a thing.
Trust me, bro. Yeah.
I wonder what he's going to do after this. Him and Joaquin, man. I don't know if Joaquin has something on the slate, but I mean, I remember just doing research about this that he almost backed out of the Joker. So,
Did he really?
man, I mean, yeah, he was only signed on like a few weeks beforehand, I believe. And even then, Todd Phillips was really scared because he wasn't yet losing weight. And Joaquin's like, no, I'll get it done. And then Joaquin for like 5 weeks just ate like an apple a day and like starved himself, which is crazy.
That's the healthy way to do it, right?
Yeah, I would plan that out a lot better.
Okay.
Anyways, but
Guys, we
Jeremiah,
gotta stop shitting on Joaquin. My dog's named after one of his characters.
Which character?
Kenai from Brother Bear.
I don't think I've seen Brother Bear.
I recently found out it's a rotten movie on the tomato meter.
Really?
Phil Collins does a lot of the carrying of that movie, as well as Tarzan.
You take it easy.
I was just listening to a Phil Collins song earlier today.
Phil Collins slaps, man.
Yeah, a lot of good
All right,
songs.
Jeremiah, have you watched any of those Criterion movies that you got from the old van yet? What movie will you be recommending our audience?
Oh, okay. A movie. What have I watched recently? I haven't been watching anything recently. But actually, Joker Folie À Deux was the first time I've been to the movie theater in like over a month. It felt like such a it was such a weird time. I think the last movie I saw in the movie theater before Joker Folie À Deux was Blink Twice. So it was a while ago. Haven't really been watching too much recently, but the last good movie that I watched was The Grave of Fireflies because it's on Netflix now.
Ooh.
Really good. Tearjerker for sure. It's been on my watch list forever, so I finally watched it and really, really good. Really good. Beautiful animation. Studio Ghibli. Really emotional. A movie about just like siblings in a war-torn situation and them trying to make the most of it. It feels very slice of life, but it's in the backdrop of this just devastating war. Just a beautiful film. Yeah.
Nice. I'm gonna watch. I said a couple episodes ago, but I'm like on a mission to watch as much animation as I can because I feel like that's my favorite genre of films. But I have to get done with Game of Thrones first. Game of Thrones has really put me back when it comes to watching movies, but I will get there one day.
Wait, is it a rewatch of Game of Thrones or a first watch?
Yeah. It's my wife's first rewatch,
Okay.
or my first watch, and I'm rewatching it. Yeah.
You watch House of the Dragon? I'm
Yep.
assuming?
The thing that's crazy is my wife watched House of the Dragon before watching Game of Thrones, and she loves it. And it's just so tough making a decision of like, okay, because we've been on this for months now. We watch it pretty religiously, like maybe a couple episodes a night, and they're just long.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
I said I have my pick popped up. It's a pretty popular movie, but it doesn't have enough watches in my opinion that it should have. I'll say, especially with it being Halloween season, this is a horror movie that I don't think I've had a film impress me surprisingly this much in a really long time that I wasn't expecting. And that was The Descent. I think this is one of the most badass movies and ideas for a film ever. And me and Dan have talked about it. I remember Dan made a video a long time ago saying how there's like an all-female cast, and someone was like, well, that turn that off right there. But it's like,
I roasted that guy. That was hilarious.
this is kind of like an action movie. Eventually, it's such a good horror movie halfway in between. And then it turns into like kind of a badass action movie of these women trying to survive with like pickaxes against these monsters in caves. That's all I'll say. And it has like one of the most effective jump scares ever. And there's like a little bit of found footageness in it as well, because they have handheld cams, which
the practical
adds
effects
to,
are really good.
They're so good. And it's such a good idea as well. I'm going to rewatch it this Halloween season. I watched it. It might be like a yearly watch for me. It's so good. And there's a lot of blood in it and colors when it comes to their lighting that they have on their equipment, and then also the killings. It's really well shot. It's a really good movie. So The Descent, I recommend anybody to watch it. Honestly, it's really solid.
Okay.
Have you watched
Have
it,
you seen
Connor?
it, Jeremiah? No, I have not.
Said what?
Have you seen that one?
I haven't. I've definitely.
Okay, so I'm not alone.
It's on the watch list. It's on the watch list.
There we go.
I was gonna say I went with one I watched earlier this year. Since we were talking about these movies, I chose a De Niro movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It only has 5,000 Letterboxd reviews. Analyze this.
No, I
It's a
haven't.
very interesting concept.
Yes.
Yeah. So Stone and Jeremiah and our audience, it's basically De Niro is like in the mafia, like he does in a lot of his movies, except he starts like having some medical issue that he can't determine. So he goes and finds Billy Crystal, who's a therapist, and he tells De Niro that he's having panic attacks, and that's what's going on with him. And it's a movie based around a like mafia leader who has severe anxiety and is going to therapy.
Wait, so
It's a
did
good
this come
movie.
out before or after the Sopranos?
This was 99,
Yeah, 99.
Okay.
but it's
When
good.
Soprano-
It's
yeah, when did the
Crystal
Sopranos
in-
start?
I think around the same year, maybe.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
99,
What's
yeah,
up?
January 99.
Wow.
And then there's also a sequel to Analyze This, which wasn't nearly as good. But
We analyze that, I think.
I was thinking the same thing.
no, that's actually the title of
Was
it.
No, it's a funny movie though. It's good. I like it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's Billy Crystal, De Niro, and Lisa Kudrow are the big names in it. Same director as like Groundhog's Day, Caddyshack. Worth your time.
On the watch list. I think it might be already on the watch list, maybe.
I will say Crimes of the Future from David Cronenberg. I watched that a while back, and it's really fucking weird, but I liked it. It's Viggo Mortensen and Léa Seydoux and Kristen Stewart. I kind of don't want to say much about it. Basically, it's in the future where surgery has kind of replaced sex, and it's kind of like sex doesn't really exist anymore. It's all very like hush hush and like under like a lot of scrutiny. The government has a lot of control over society, and like Viggo Mortensen and Léa Seydoux like do surgeries on each other and like film it. It's really odd, but it's very thought provoking. I love Viggo Mortensen. Léa Seydoux is amazing, and it's Cronenberg. People either I think like it a lot or don't at all, but it's on Hulu. And Cronenberg's new movie is coming out, I think January of next year, The Shroud. So before that, watch this. You might hate it, but you might like it. So
Did you know that it was based off of a short film by him? You probably did.
Yeah, I feel like I read about that when I
From
watched
1970. Jeez.
it. Yeah, it's really wild. It's like kind of. It's one of his probably grosser movies to watch, but like also it's really interesting and really it's thought provoking. It's not too bad if you can watch like you watch The Substance, you can watch this. So.
Nice. Well, there's our recommendations for the week. Jeremiah, do you have a new film on the way? I thought I saw an Instagram post about that.
Yeah, I do. So for my first semester at graduate school, we have to. It's actually really cool. We have to make a film that's a maximum of 5 minutes, a minimum of 2 minutes, I believe. And it's like no dialogue. So it's a no dialogue short film. And my the premise for mine is we follow two people who think they may like a young couple who thinks they've conceived a child essentially, and we follow them as they take a pregnancy test. And so like you'll be like following them in real time, like seeing them go through the emotions as they're like waiting for the results of the pregnancy test, and then once the result comes, we'll see what happens after that. Like what are the ramifications of the results? And yeah, that's essentially the movie. No dialogue, so just focusing on visual language and using that as the main storytelling tool. And I'm really excited. Yeah, I'm casting right now.
And you've never done that before, right?
No dialogue?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, never done it before. So I'm really excited, actually. I think it's like I'm actually really excited for it because I feel like with Stalemate, it was such an experiment, and I feel like there was so much that I mean I liked making it like, but I feel like there was so much that that wasn't utilized because I was trying to focus on like I don't know like having all this like specific writing and like trying to like focus on like all of this like all these different locations and stuff like that. But this is so much more stripped down, and I'm able to just focus on just visual storytelling and having like a simple story and like only I have like two locations, which is a bedroom and a bathroom, so it's like very stripped down. It's like less than 5 minutes, so I'm just super excited to just like strip everything away and just tell a story in the most simple way possible. And I feel like it's going to help me a lot as a storyteller and as a filmmaker, because I feel like when you take a lot of elements away, you have to kind of adapt and just lean on the resources that you have and lean on limitations. So I think it's going to be good. I'm excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
Or our audience definitely knows who you are. So if you guys aren't following Jeremiah yet, please do, because I mean, Jeremiah just said that he hasn't watched the movie really in about a month when it comes to Joker and Blink Twice. But that, let me tell you, those are not the only two movies that he's watched in that
Yeah,
span.
yeah.
I mean, you're always seeking out, you're trying to like knock out all the classics and just broaden, your film taste, not only because you love film, but also because you're a filmmaker. So I feel like anybody out there should follow you. And I almost commented on your last video. I love those videos that you do where it's like, I don't know how you do them, to be honest, but it's like where you do yourself really fast and you have like the quote over your head.
Oh yeah.
I almost commented on your last video and said like day one of asking Real Takes to do something like this.
Dude, you definitely should, bro. People would eat that up, dude.
That would be so
Nah, you
funny.
guys don't want that.
But anyways, guys, next week we're going to be talking about SNL movies for Saturday night. So we're still putting together which movies we will do. But we're really excited for that film. A lot of good reviews have come out. A lot of just saying it's a really entertaining film to watch. So be on the lookout for that coming next week. But until then, thanks for listening to us talk about our favorite things in the world, movies. But please, this week, go outside, sit on a park bench, touch some grass, and we'll see you then. Peace.